An ordinary young man lives in a world where people can only choose one profession to develop, but everything changes when he awakens an absurd ability, freely switching classes as many times as he wants. While everyone else is stuck on a single path, he begins to master multiple professions at once, gaining power at an unbelievable speed. And it doesn't stop there, because along with this ability comes an even more broken one, the power to summon max-level goddesses to fight by his side. Through constant battles, rapid growth, and divine allies, he walks a path completely outside the rules, becoming an existence that defies the very system of his world. And if you want to see just how far this insane power can go, how he masters every class and still fights alongside max-level goddesses, come with me in this video. The protagonist's name is Yun Xinghe. His parents passed away when he was young, and his older sister, Yun Wan, was the one who raised him. Their life was always very humble and peaceful, but about a year ago, his sister started disappearing from time to time. Every time she came back, she never explained why she had vanished. 3 months ago, his sister disappeared for the last time and was found in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. She was covered in blood and gravely injured, and now she is in a coma. To pay for his sister's medical expenses, he, who had endured the 996 work schedule for years, finally gathered the courage to present his business proposal and, to his surprise, received a call from an investor. So, this may be his big opportunity. Xinghe was walking alone down the street when all of a sudden a woman started approaching him and called him dear, asking why he was walking so fast. She questioned whether he did not care that his girlfriend might get lost. She managed to catch up and grabbed his arm, saying that he knows very well that she is the beauty of Iceland Business School and that many bad guys are after her, so the baby is scared. The protagonist is a little surprised and says that maybe she has mistaken him for someone else. The woman is startled and steps back, asking the protagonist who he is and why he is wearing the same clothes as her boyfriend, trying to hit on her. Suddenly, from the other side of the street, the woman's boyfriend yells at the protagonist, asking what he thinks he is doing, hitting on his girlfriend right in front of him. The woman, who was a little lost, shifts her gaze toward her boyfriend, but suddenly a strange knight runs toward the two of them. To save the girl, the protagonist shoves her away with all his strength, but ends up being struck head-on by the knight. The girl's boyfriend asks if she is okay, but she only keeps screaming that a person had just been taken out right there. Before completely losing consciousness, the protagonist thinks that matching outfits are not scary, but matching couple outfits can be. On top of that, the cliché car accident scene is one thing, but he cannot understand what is wrong with that heavily armored knight. A short while later, he starts regaining consciousness and thinks that he is feeling a delicate and very soft touch, which was not what he expected after being hit head-on by a knight in heavy armor. As soon as he opens his eyes, he is startled and asks who that woman is and where he is. The girl on top of him was asking for water because she was very thirsty. Xinghe looks at her chained up and becomes confused, asking if he's already dead and has ended up in the underworld. But the woman keeps begging for water and grabs his leg. Xinghe gets frightened and pulls away, telling the ghost that she cannot have that water. But the woman becomes completely enraged and starts screaming, making the pressure in the entire place rise. The protagonist questions whether that thing in front of him could be a tail. The girl simply kisses him, and the protagonist thinks that it is true that when boys are away from home, they must learn to protect themselves. Suddenly, a system appears saying that the heroine of this plane has successfully logged in, and he receives a random skill reward. The randomly drawn skill is the Heart Purification Technique. The Beauty Compendium has also been activated. The system explains that after he reaches 100% favorability with the heroine, she will enter the compendium and the host will be able to summon her at any time, and the heroine's corresponding profession will awaken. The main mission has also been issued. He must survive in Longtan Village for 3 days, and the completion reward is 1,000 reward points. He can return to the current world, and the number of participants for that mission is 5 people. A hidden mission has not been discovered yet, the hidden quest, and additional rewards can be obtained. After receiving all that information, the protagonist is completely confused, asking whether that is a system, a scam, or if maybe he is transmigrated. On top of that, he has no idea what it means to conquer the heroine. While they were kissing, a person approaches and pulls the protagonist away from the girl. The man tells him to be very careful and not let that female demon bewitch his mind because they spent a lot of effort managing to capture her. The man calls the protagonist Young Master and says that his clothes are a little peculiar and that apparently he must be a little strange. The girl keeps looking at them and touches her own body, saying that she cannot let that go to waste. The protagonist thinks that she is definitely a female demon. A system notification appears saying that he allowed the heroine to drink to quench her thirst, and her favorability has increased by 10%. The woman says that the protagonist has satisfied her slight thirst, so she will give him a piece of advice and tells him that he must never trust that fake Taoist. The man becomes nervous with her, saying that she is a wicked creature, because even in the face of imminent death, she still dares to spread lies, and he calls Xinghei a boy. He starts coughing and tells the protagonist not to let himself be deceived by her. He also says that it is getting late, and that place is often frequented by monsters at night, so it is very dangerous to stay there. He invites Xinghe to go with him, saying that he will take him to spend the night at a villager's house. The protagonist, a bit confused, reflects on what just happened, because that man kept calling him young master, but just now called him a boy and quickly corrected himself, which shows that that Taoist priest really seems suspicious. As they walk, something suddenly runs past Xinghe. He becomes worried and asks the priest if he saw that because it seemed like a shadow just ran past them. The priest says he did not pay much attention, but it is almost nightfall and it might be a monster. He tells the protagonist that his name is Ling Suzi and explains that he came down the mountain under his master's orders to capture that fox demon in Longtan village. Xinghe says that now the fox demon has already been captured and asks why he has not returned yet. Ling Suzi is surprised, thinking that this boy is a bit unusual because he had said he came down the mountain to subdue a demon, and that should have been something admirable. Ling Suzi explains that he still has some things to resolve, so he cannot return yet. Suddenly, a little girl appears and says to Ling Suzi that he brought another stranger back. The protagonist becomes even more suspicious because she just said, another. Moreover, he does not understand why that little girl is so cheerful. Ling Suzi pats the girl's head, calling her Li, and tells her to be a bit more polite since that young master needs to spend the night in the village, and asks if he can stay at her house. She smiles and says it is fine because her older brother smells very nice, so she likes him. Xinghe smells his own arm and says that the smell is not that good. The little girl takes the two of them to her house, saying she lives right there, and apparently her father and mother are not home. They enter the house, and Li tells the protagonist that he can make himself at home and that when her parents return, she will introduce him to them. However, she does not know if she can endure her hunger until then. Xinghe remains confused and suspicious of everything, questioning what kind of strange statement that was and whether all children in ancient times speak like that. Ling Suzi bids farewell to the young master and says that the girl will take care of him for now, so he needs to leave to handle other matters. Xinghe says it is fine and thanks him for everything he has done. He looks around the house and thinks that the girl is living in a very damp environment, and there is a disgusting, fishy smell permeating the entire room. Suddenly, a man appears at the window, and the protagonist realizes that it is the same figure that ran past him earlier. The man starts shouting and banging on the window, telling the protagonist to run immediately from that place, because the villagers in that village are not alive, and he needs to leave while it is still light. Xinghe asks the man who he is, but the girl appears, asking who he is talking to. Xinghe simply ignores her and runs out of the house, saying that something is very wrong with that village and that it definitely has a huge problem. Moreover, that strange man outside the window seems to know something, and judging by his clothes, he is wearing modern attire just like him, so that guy might also be a transmigrator in this mission. A system appears again saying that the hidden mission has been triggered. He needs to find and confirm a teammate to complete that mission. In that way, he can receive 100 reward points. Xinghe, who unintentionally triggered a hidden mission, realizes that that man is so fast that he has already disappeared again. The villagers begin to surround him in a frightening way, but a girl tells him not to worry because she was also looked at like that when she arrived. And even though the villagers seem very strange, it is fine because they will not hurt him. She also says that judging by the clothes he is wearing, if she is not mistaken, he, just like her, was inexplicably sent to that place from modern times. Xinghe walks over to her, saying that he has finally met a teammate who is in a normal human state. The system reports that the second teammate for that mission has been found and confirmed, so he can receive 100 reward points. The woman introduces herself, saying that her name is Qing. The people of the village were saying that they were very hungry, and that now they had fresh flesh and blood. That girl from before appears laughing, saying that both the girl and the protagonist smell very good, so she really wants to taste them. Qing finally understands what was happening because that priest who brought her to the village had warned her that monsters appear in the village at night. And apparently what he meant was that the villagers would transform into monsters at night. However, she does not know what she should do now. Suddenly, two of the villagers are taken out and Qing is surprised, asking where the protagonist got a pistol. He explains that he traded in the system shop and spent a total of 100 reward points on a weapon and 1 reward point per bullet fired. That is a Desert Eagle. He takes out the monsters around him and shouts, asking if they want another one, because if they want another one, he will give it to them. Qing asks where he got the reward points because they had told her that she would only be able to earn reward points after completing the main mission of surviving 3 days in that place. Xinghe thinks that apparently that woman did not trigger a hidden mission. He thinks that he needs to find another teammate and confirm them in order to continue the mission. On top of that, that woman's earlier words were a little strange when she only said that she had a hunch that he probably belonged to modern times. the monsters that had been shot begin to get back up, and Ching is surprised, asking how that is possible since not even a fatal blow to the head was enough to stop them. She looks back and asks the protagonist what they should do now. However, he was no longer there, and that makes her even more frightened, asking where he went. Xinghe was already running and asks her what she is still doing there, because she needs to run. Ching calls him an idiot and questions how he can abandon a girl alone and run off, because that is something only a man with low testosterone would do. The monsters keep advancing after them, but the protagonist was slowing them all down with a few shots. Ching tells him to stop being so stupid, because he has already seen that the bullets are useless, so why does he keep wasting so many bullets? Xinghe says that it depends a lot on the objective, because the bullets cannot eliminate them, but they will fall when they are hit, and that can buy them crucial time to escape. She thinks that this really makes sense, and that she was the idiot the whole time. Sometime later, the protagonist arrives at the place where that fox demon was. Ching asks why he brought her there, since that is where that demon is. She says that maybe the protagonist is thinking that they will not be able to escape, so it does not matter who devours them. Xinghe asks whether she has considered something a little different. Ling Susi only warned that there would be monsters in the village at night, but he hid the fact that the monsters are the villagers, and that means he is a bad guy. Ching is surprised again and says that indeed, that also makes a lot of sense. The protagonist continues explaining that Ling Suzi and that demon are clearly in conflict. Even if she is not a good person, at least she is not on that guy's side, so maybe she can help somehow. The protagonist stops in front of her, and the fox demon looks at him, saying that he is very kind because he knows that that poor concubine is very thirsty, and asks whether he came to bring her a little water again. Xinghe feels embarrassed and says that he already warned her that she cannot drink the water from that place, so they need to do the same thing they did before. He holds her face and kisses her. The system reports that the protagonist once again became the heroine's timely rain after a long drought, and the heroine's favorability increased by 10%. The two of them are a little embarrassed, but Xinghe notices that her favorability has increased once again, and apparently that is how he can win over the heroine. So he has to keep doing that until her favorability reaches the maximum. He keeps kissing her over and over again. Meanwhile, the monsters from the village were already getting closer. Ching becomes irritated, asking if he is serious, because the mutant villagers are already attacking again and he is still fooling around. Xinghe was already tired from kissing so much. However, he could not understand why her favorability was not increasing, and maybe that was because she was already satisfied, which meant all that effort had been for nothing. The fox demon laughs, saying that the protagonist is a little annoying, but also a pervert. Still, he worked very hard to quench that poor concubine's thirst, so she will help him this time. With just one finger, she creates a wall of fire surrounding all of them, preventing the villagers from advancing. Ching points out that apparently all the villagers seem to be afraid of fire because they do not dare come any closer. She looks like she's about to cry, and Xinghe asks what happened because they were just saved, so why is she almost crying? Ching throws herself into the protagonist's arms, saying that in order to please the demon and make her help them, the protagonist sacrificed his charm. On top of that, Ching misunderstood everything, so she would like to apologize, because he really managed to make her feel guilty. However, the protagonist was completely lost, since he did not understand anything she was trying to say. The fox demon simply watched the situation while laughing, saying that it is interesting and that apparently humans always display something impressive. Ching asks what they should do now because the villagers are still surrounding them and the fox demon is chained there, so their movement is completely limited. Xinghe looks at the demon and notices that she's wearing a collar with a keyhole. Fortunately, he still had a keychain with him, so maybe if he examined it, he could try to open it. The demon tells the protagonist that there is no point in trying because those iron chains are made of 1,000-year profound iron. It is the legendary dragon trapping lock, used specifically to shackle dragons. Ling Zuzi used it to bind her precisely to make sure nothing would go wrong, and there is absolutely no one in that world who can break them by brute force. But Xinghe manages to remove the chains from her body, leaving the demon completely shocked, unable to believe that he actually pulled it off, making her question who he really is. The system reports that her favorability has increased by another 10%. Xinghe thinks that it really worked, because he remembered that once his sister said that with that type of lock, he only needs to insert something sturdy into the keyhole. After that, he presses the small protrusion inside the hole and turns it clockwise with a bit of force to open it. At present, the progress has already reached 30% favorability, unlocking the heroine's true name, which is Daji. Xinghe is surprised to see that she is actually the legendary demon Daji. However, she is a little different from the legendary version he knows. On top of that, he gained 1,000 points, and that is a lot. It is the same number of reward points a person gets after completing the main mission. That means completing the main mission is only the minimum. Digging up as many hidden missions as possible is where the real profit is. Ching tells them to look because the villagers saw that Daji has been freed and are running away. Daji stands up laughing, asking whether they really believe they can escape, because no living being she has ever set her eyes on has managed to escape. And now it is time to take revenge for everything she went through. She concentrates her magic at her fingertips to attack, but the protagonist grabs her hand, asking her to wait a moment and let the villagers return to their homes. Daji asks why and tells him to give her a reason. Shingha puts the chain back around her neck, apologizing, but explains that he is the veteran there. Daji becomes a little upset, asking why he did that. The next day, she was still imprisoned, and a blue-haired man was playing with her, imitating a dog. Daji becomes irritated, saying that she has already lost count of how many times she has said that she is not a dog but a fox. The blue-haired man is surprised to see that she is a talking female dog. Daji takes a deep breath and asks the heavens why she must suffer so much. Because first she met one weirdo, and now she has encountered another person who is not right in the head. Ling Zuzi appears again and, exactly as happened with the protagonist, approaches the man saying that, judging by his strange clothes, he is a young master and perhaps a little odd. But in truth, Ling Zuzi found it a bit strange, because all the other outsiders arrived in that world the day before. So why is that guy the only one who arrived just now? The blue-haired man laughs, saying that his name is Kai Aiwan. Ling Zuzi thinks that this boy seems a little slow, but that is good because the stupider he is, the easier he will be to deceive. Ling Zuzi continues his act, telling Aiwan that this is probably his first time there, so he likely does not know the dangers of that place. He invites the young man to go with him, saying that he will explain everything on the way and also take him to a village so he can calm down a little. Meanwhile, back in the village, Ching was confused and calls the protagonist Hey, asking what was going on with him the night before because he clearly saved the fox demon. So why did he lock her up again, since it would have been much better to let her eliminate all those villagers? The protagonist found that a little strange since after daybreak, all the villagers had completely disappeared. Xinghe walks over to Ching and says that first of all, his name is not Hei, it is Xinghe, and second, he asks whether she already forgot that the fox demon was imprisoned by Ling Zuzi. She asks what that has to do with the whole story. The protagonist explains that it means the fox demon cannot defeat that guy, and the main mission they need to complete is to survive in that village for 3 days, but only one has passed. He steps closer to her, saying that if Ling Zuzi finds out that he saved the fox demon, it will mean that they have completely rebelled against him. So he will make a move, and with the strength they currently have, they will not have the slightest chance of doing anything. Ching thinks that this really makes a lot of sense, and that apparently she keeps misunderstanding everything as always. However, the protagonist thinks that this is only one of the reasons. The most important thing is that he already said that Iron Chain is the dragon trapping lock, which looks like an incredible divine artifact. So why would he not take advantage of a good find like that? He directly spent 10 reward points in the system shop to exchange them for a similar iron chain and secretly swapped the lock, and that is satisfying. Suddenly, Ling Zuzi appears there with Aiwan and is surprised to see that the protagonist was still there, asking how he is still there. Xinghe takes advantage of the situation and starts laughing, asking what is wrong and why the Taoist priest seems so surprised. Ling Zuzi realizes that apparently he will not be able to keep it a secret, so he will have to find another way to deceive them. On top of that, the protagonist notices that the person who just arrived, judging by the clothes, is also a teammate. A system reports that he managed to find and confirm the third teammate for that mission, and received another 100 reward points. Xinghe thinks that, according to what was explained, the main mission has a total of 5 people. Besides him, 3 have already been found, so only 1 remains. And if he is not completely wrong, the answer is very obvious. The protagonist points his finger at Ling Zuzi, saying that he is also a teammate. Ling Zuzi apologizes and explains that he does not understand what the young master is trying to say. Xinghe thinks that the system had no reaction when he said that, so maybe he guessed wrong, but Ling Zuzi's expression clearly shows a brief moment of panic. Besides that, where did the last missing teammate he had seen before go? Aiwan looks at the protagonist with a smile and says that it has been a long time since they last saw each other. But Xinghe replies that Aiwan is probably mistaking him for someone else, since the two of them do not know each other. Ching asks whether Xinghe really does not know that guy, and the protagonist says no. However, he hesitates and thinks that he really cannot remember that man, which means he does not know him, but the way he greeted him did not seem fake. Ching says that that person is not an idiot, but all of them arrived the day before, so why did only he arrive now? Aiwan explains that the day before, he was wandering around outside and did not enter the village. Ching is surprised and irritated, asking whether he does not know that place is often frequented by monsters during the night, and is therefore very dangerous. Iwan explains that that is exactly why he did not enter the village, since it is dangerous to stay inside it at night, and monsters appear, so why would he go in there? Ching says that this may be the correct solution, and asks whether that boy could be a genius. Shinga says that she calls other people idiots, but what he just said is clearly genius. Ling Shuzi thinks that this is how that boy got there, and he truly did not expect him to stumble onto the truth. He tries to change the subject, asking them to forgive him. He explains that when he found Iwan, he already seemed to have been bewitched by that fox demon, because with monsters appearing at night, it is only natural and safer for everyone to stay inside their homes. On top of that, he knows that Xinghe and Qing must be full of doubts in their hearts and may even be suspicious of him. He asks the two of them to follow him again so that he can explain everything. They go to a waterfall and he explains that the place has an ancient custom. The bodies of the deceased are placed in a black coffin and buried in the waters of Dragon Lake behind the village, sacrificed to the dragon god in the depths of the lake. The stories say that this allows the deceased to be reborn in the eternal heavenly realm and that their souls gain eternal life. What is happening now is that mysterious water burial ritual. But what he truly did not expect is that the villagers wanted to gain eternal life not for the souls of the dead but for themselves. And apparently the villagers sacrificed strangers to the dragon god in order to gain its power, thus achieving eternal life. However, the dragon god's power is evil, and the villagers were twisted by that power, transforming into monsters. Xinghe explains that, in other words, the person inside that black coffin is probably the last teammate who has not appeared yet. Qing is surprised, saying that the black coffin contains a transmigrator just like them. The system appears and informs the protagonist that he found and confirmed the fourth teammate for the mission, receiving another 100 points. He smiles, seeing that he guessed exactly right. Qing says that Ling Suzi does not seem to be lying because she just heard the notification about receiving reward points. The protagonist says that he received it too. Ling Suzi keeps acting, saying that all of this is his fault because he had to watch over the fox demon at night and failed to discover in time that the villagers were the monsters appearing during the night, and he almost caused the elimination of his friends. Ling Suzi thinks that at a moment like that, in order to maintain the lie, he needs to reveal a little bit of the truth. He believes that since he did not lie completely, they will trust him once again. However, the truth is incomplete, which makes it a small lie. On the other hand, the protagonist was thinking that he does not believe a single word that Idiot said, since apparently he is only playing with an incomplete truth. He questions whether Ling Suzi really thinks he can deceive him, because he is going to play the game perfectly. The villagers throw the black coffin into the water and begin to pray. Night falls and they begin to transform. A very loud sound starts to take over the entire place. Qing asks what that sound is, because it feels like her eardrums are being pierced. Ling Shuzi gets ready and says that it is the dragon's roar, and that the villagers are imitating the sound in order to worship the dragon god. He thinks that he was too cautious and afraid of acting rashly, so he kept playing along with them all this time, but now they are only novices, so they need to be eliminated. On the other hand, the protagonist was concentrating, questioning what kind of dragon roar that was, because it sounded more like the simple vibration of fish gills, but he does not understand why it can be heard from so far away. However, he possesses a skill that he got from his older sister, and it's no wonder the villagers did not dare approach her, because her ability naturally protects him. Xinghe walks up to Ling Suzi and grabs his hand, questioning what he is trying to do. Ling Suzi is surprised to see that the protagonist is not affected by the dragon's roar, which means he still needs to act cautiously. He laughs and calls the protagonist young master once again, saying that he is overthinking things. He explains that Qing's screams might attract the villagers' attention, so he wanted to stop her. However, the protagonist shouts that this is not good at all because the villagers have already noticed their presence. Ling Suzi starts running, saying that they need to split up and not let the villagers catch them. Qing tells him to wait because this is the right moment for him to display his divine power and subdue all those demons. But Ling Suzi simply ignores her and keeps running. The protagonist points out that it is already good enough that that guy is not harming them, and yet she still wants him to provide help. However, she says that is not the point because she knows very well that that guy is evil and that he is only running away, but she thought he still wanted to keep pretending a little longer and save them. Iwan comes hopping between the two of them, saying that Qing must be tired of playing hide-and-seek and now wants to play tag, so he will go first, since he is very good at that game. She gets irritated, saying that he is nothing but a coward, but the protagonist grabs her hand and starts running. He says that she needs to stop arguing with people and just ignore them, since they cannot stay there and need to run. A short while later, they return to the waterfall. The protagonist explains that the most dangerous places are often the safest, because the villagers just left that place and will not expect them to come back to the waterfall. Qing becomes confused and says that the protagonist had said they needed to escape, so why did he bring her back to the lake again? He turns around and does not answer. She asks whether he is okay. He says it is nothing serious, only that for some reason he suddenly feels dizzy and a little weak, and very thirsty with his throat uncomfortably dry. Ching says that those symptoms indicate dehydration, but it should not be like that since he was perfectly fine just a moment ago. So how could he become dehydrated in such a short time? They enter a small cave and Ching kicks something. When she looks, she realizes it is a key. Xinghe tells her to be careful since there is someone ahead. She steps a little closer to see what it is and tells the protagonist not to worry, because it is only a corpse. He keeps coughing, saying that he did not expect a girl like her to be so brave, and asks whether she is not even a little scared when seeing a corpse. She continues examining the body and explains that in her current life she is a foreign forensic doctor, so she has already seen some corpses. Besides, that is a mummified corpse, so it is not that frightening. Xinghe realizes that this is the same man he had seen the day before inside the village, and now he is lifeless. That man had warned him that the village was dangerous and told him to run away. Ching touches the corpse's abdomen, saying that something is not right because that body was clearly mummified, but not only does it fail to show rigor mortis from muscle contraction and stiffening, it still retains residual warmth. It is as if the blood and moisture in his body had evaporated instantly and he had died recently. On top of that, she questions why there is a strange bulge in the abdomen. She continues examining it and realizes that the hand of that mummified corpse indicates that he belonged to the authorities, so he might have been a police officer before being killed. However, she questions how a modern professional appeared in such an ancient village. The protagonist explains that it was for the same reason they also appeared, pointing out that he is a transmigrator and probably one of the companions in that mission. Ching asks whether he means that someone imprisoned that man there and killed him, and whether that person could be Ling Suzi. The protagonist says no, and that the man most likely imprisoned himself there of his own accord. Ching asks him to explain better how he knows that. Xinghe says that the keys she found a moment ago probably belong to the handcuffs. Ling Suzi even used the dragon trapping chains to bind the fox demon. Given his cautious nature, he would not leave the key nearby, allowing that man to have a chance to be saved. Ching also starts coughing and asks why that man would lock himself there to die alone. Suddenly, something strange comes out from inside that man's stomach and tries to attack her. The protagonist shouts for her to be careful and pulls her away with one hand while using the other to fire at that thing. However, the creature manages to dodge the shot. The protagonist keeps firing, but the monster dodges every bullet. The monster stops in the corner of the wall and stares at them, telling them to drink wine. Ching says that the monster is mocking the protagonist. Xinghe fires a few more times, but suddenly stops shooting. Ching becomes worried, asking whether he ran out of bullets, because now they do not stand the slightest chance. The monster takes advantage of that opportunity. She asks once again whether he really ran out of bullets. Xinghe says yes. Now his pistol is completely empty. Ching grows desperate, saying that this is not the answer she wanted to hear because now they are going to die there. Xinghe tells her to calm down and says that they are not going to die yet. Suddenly, he pulls out an AWP and points it at the monster, asking whether it has any last words. He simply tells the monster to say goodbye. The system reports that the protagonist spent 1,000 reward points to exchange for a B-rank Barrett sniper rifle and 10 reward points for one bullet, leaving him with only 260 points. Xinghe fires a precise shot at the monster, completely destroying it. Ching is impressed, saying that he is amazing, but asks him to explain where he pulled that sniper rifle from. Xinghe says that is not important right now and tells her to immediately go examine the monster's corpse. Ching walks over there and says that the protagonist blasted the monster into pieces, so how could she possibly examine it? However, judging from the monster's overall shape before it was destroyed, she can roughly deduce that it was probably just a newborn hatchling. Xinghe keeps coughing and thinks that he has a very bad feeling. She continues analyzing and says that in the hatchling monster's remains there is only the skeleton connected to the skin and the teeth. Everything else is just blood and water, which completely goes against basic biological structure. The blood inside that hatchling is not its own and must be the blood of the human who locked himself in that place. Xinghe asks how she can know all of that. Ching explains that it is very simple because human blood and the blood of other animals show significant differences in many aspects. The easiest and most direct way to distinguish them is by observing the color. Human blood can generally be considered red, while animal blood comes in more varied colors, including blue, green, red, pink, and even colorless. The differences in those colors are mainly determined by the hemoglobin in the blood. Different hemoglobins form complexes with metal ions in different ways, causing the blood to appear in distinct colors. Xinghe thinks that his worst fears have come true. She becomes confused, saying that the protagonist managed to eliminate that monster successfully, so why does he still look so serious? Xinghe asks her whether it is possible that the reason that man became a mummified corpse is because the monster hatchling parasitized his body and sucked him dry to death. Combined with the fact that the villagers were also soaked, he fears that all of them may already have been parasitized by monster embryos. Parasitic monster embryos inside humans should not kill their host quickly, at least not until they have completed their incubation. The embryos force their parasitized host to constantly seek water, and that is why all the villagers were drenched. It is even possible that, as long as enough water is supplied to the monster embryo inside the body, over time the embryo will consume the host from the inside out, completing its fusion with it. In that way, in the end, the host becomes the monster, and the monster becomes the host. That is what the villagers call achieving eternal life. And the imprisoned man probably did not want to turn into a monster and harm others, which is why he locked himself there voluntarily to die. But he did not expect that even so, the monster embryo would still fail to completely consume the host and fuse with him perfectly. As a result, it would end up bursting out through the abdomen like a hatchling. Ching becomes even more worried, saying that if that is the case, then the protagonist's current condition is exactly like that of someone parasitized by a monster embryo. Xinghe starts coughing even more and says that maybe that is true. Suddenly, he begins to feel something strange, while wondering when exactly he was parasitized by a monster embryo. Ching says that he needs to rehydrate immediately. The hint from the main mission states that as long as he survives inside that village for 3 days, they will be able to return to the real world. And this is already the second day, so they only need to wait one more day to go back to the real world, where, with medical advances, they will certainly find a way to cure him. However, Ching points out that the embryos most likely originate from the water of that dragon lake, and that is the only source of water in the village. She begins wondering what they should do and suddenly gets an idea, saying that there is still one way. She becomes a little embarrassed and starts approaching the protagonist. Xinghe then asks what exactly she's trying to do. Ching presses him against the wall and tells him not to move, because she has made a big decision to give it everything she has. She points out that the protagonist has already saved her several times, and that this time it is her turn to help him. Ching begins kissing him, asking whether she should prolong the kiss because that is probably the only way to give him enough water. Xinghe takes advantage of the situation and starts being a little more proactive. She is surprised because she had not even fully made up her mind yet, but the protagonist had already changed. However, she decides to let that slide since, in the end, whether he receives or she gives water, it would result in the same effect. Ching is also surprised, asking whether that is what a first kiss feels like, because it is an indescribable sensation. She tries to avoid those thoughts because she is only saving her teammate, but the atmosphere between the two of them begins to heat up, and she does her best to control herself and not think about anything else, since that was how Xinghe gave water to the fox demon, and she is only doing the same thing. As soon as they finish that long kiss, she apologizes, saying that she has never had any experience with that before, so she is probably not as skilled as Xinghe and the fox demon, but she says that she is truly trying her best to help him. The protagonist is surprised to see that this was what she was worried about, because he had thought she had suddenly realized that she could simply exchange points for a bottle of water in the system shop. He touches her head and Ching thinks that Xinghe is a very kind person. The protagonist tells her to stop thinking about such silly things, because she is doing very well, and because of that he would really like to thank her for working so hard to save his life. And because of that, he is already feeling much better. Ching becomes so embarrassed that she starts backing away from him, asking why he is being so kind, because she was only trying to save him and not for any other reason, so he should not have unnecessary thoughts. Xinghe is surprised and wonders whether she is really angry because a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea, which is truly difficult to understand, since he has no idea why she is acting like that. A little later, outside the waterfall, Ching asks why the protagonist brought her there now, because they should stay hidden until dawn and only come out after the villagers return to normal. Xinghe asks how she can be so sure that the villagers will return to normal as soon as day breaks. Ching explains that they said there are monsters there during the night. At first they thought they were real monsters, but later they found out that they were the villagers. Xinghe agrees with her, but asks who it was that told her the monsters would appear at night. Ching says it was Ling Suzi. The protagonist says that is exactly what she is overlooking. The truth is that they cannot be sure that the villagers only transform into monsters during the night. Even Ling Suzi's identity is unknown. On top of that, the main mission is to survive inside that place for 3 days, and 2 days have already passed. So he does not believe the enemy will let them get through the final day so easily. He points out that it is like playing a game at the end of a level when players usually run into a boss. So although it looks like they are close to completing the main mission, that also means it is very likely they will encounter that boss soon. So there is not much time left, and they must quickly figure out what is going on in that place and who that final boss is. He points out that there is the dragon god worshipped by the villagers, and the monster hatchling that parasitizes humans, whose only source is the water. So the entire origin of the strangeness lies there. He jumps into the water, saying that only by personally going down into the depths of the dragon well will they be able to see the truth behind all of this. Ching sees him jump and asks the protagonist to wait a moment. However, he had already dived in. 10 minutes later, she is still at the edge of the lake and he has not returned. She thinks that an ordinary person with normal lung capacity and no training can hold their breath underwater for at most 1.5 minutes. However, trained athletes usually have greater lung capacity and better cardiorespiratory function, allowing them to hold their breath underwater for up to 4 minutes. But 10 minutes have already passed, so maybe he has already been killed. Worried, she begins wondering what she should do in a situation like that. In desperation, she shouts that although she is not very close to that boy, and if it were not for him over the past 2 days, she would have already been eliminated long ago. She had been avoiding going in since she is not a very good swimmer, and risking her life to save someone she does not know well does not seem very worthwhile. But if she does not save him, her conscience will not let her rest. She thinks that the most important thing is still that she gave the first kiss of her life to that boy, so if he just dies like that, she will be upset. She takes off her shoes thinking that there is no other option, and that she has to give it everything she has and begs that he not be completely dead by the time she reaches him. As she dives in to try to find him, she notices a person floating a little farther below and wonders whether it could be the protagonist, and if he is in that state, then that means he may really have drowned. She tries to swim toward him, saying that she needs to give him mouth-to-mouth oxygen as quickly as possible. Although the oxygen content in exhaled breath is extremely low, that method can temporarily extend rescue time and cannot improve the dangerous situation. But since there is no other way, she has to try no matter what. As soon as she gets close to what she had seen, she tries to pass him oxygen, but then notices the protagonist beside her wearing a diving suit. She's so surprised that she tries to speak underwater, and because of that, all the breath she was holding is completely forced out. She keeps questioning why he is dressed like that. Realizing that she can no longer hold her breath, she thinks that she only made things worse because now she is going to drown too, and she slowly begins to lose consciousness. However, she soon starts seeing again and questions whether what is around her is the sky and whether the sky also exists underwater. The protagonist starts shouting at her, saying that if she is awake, she needs to hurry and help him, because he spent more than 50 reward points to buy a diving suit for her too, so he does not want to waste his reward points. She looks down and sees him trying to grab the black coffin that the villagers had thrown into the lake. Shinka tells her to stop standing around and move already because he cannot pull that thing by himself. She asks if that is really the same black coffin that the villagers threw in there a little earlier. While helping him with the chains, embarrassed, she tells him not to misunderstand because she did not go to save him just because he got her first kiss. She explains that the protagonist has already saved her countless times, so she simply wants to return the favor so she will not owe him anything. Shingha questions whether she is really the one saving him, because it was he who kept her from drowning by giving her the diving suit. Ching is left speechless and thinks that a girl only says things like that because she is shy, but apparently the protagonist only knows how to focus on the wrong things, and because of that, she is hating him. As soon as they manage to open that coffin, the body of a monster is inside. They are both surprised, because they had learned that the black coffin contained the body of the last teammate, so how can this be right? Shinga tells her to look carefully because that creature's body is covered with strange scales, and they do not look like fish scales, but dragon scales. He asks whether she believes it is possible that the being in front of them could be the dragon god the villagers were talking about. Ching is completely confused, asking if that really is the dragon god, because their last teammate is the boss, and apparently the boss is already dead. Xinghe notices something on the ground while Ching is completely lost, asking what exactly is going on there. He crouches down and starts digging up what he had seen. A few minutes later, he manages to dig out a stone with some writing on it. He asks why the Dragon Village stone is at the bottom of that lake. Ching warns that apparently something is swimming toward them. She looks around and realizes that the situation is very bad because they are surrounded by fish monsters. She points out that they really are completely surrounded and asks what they should do now. Xinghe asks who said they are completely surrounded because there is a very clear path right above them. He starts swimming upward and she is surprised because he never follows the rules. As they swam upward, the fish monsters did not seem aggressive. They were shouting at the protagonist and his companion to wait and asking for help. Ching calls out to the protagonist and says that she heard a fish monster speak, asking if it is possible that she is hallucinating. Shinke looks back and says that she is not hallucinating and that those monsters really did speak. Ching asks how that is possible since monsters do not know how to talk, but apparently they are asking for help. Those monsters tell the protagonist that they are not actually monsters because they are all just like them, and they insist that they are humans. Ching is doubtful and says that they do not look alike at all and questions whether the monsters really think they would fall for such an obvious lie. She tells Xinghe to leave with her because it is obvious that those monsters are trying to trick them so they can devour them. But the protagonist simply ignores everything and starts diving back down again. She is so shocked by that she says it cannot be true and asks why he is swimming back toward those monsters again. How can he trust a monster that much? Xinghe approaches them and asks whether they are all villagers from Dragon Village. One of the monsters tells him that that is exactly right and that the people they saw on the surface are the real monsters because they were originally human. Xinghe thinks that makes sense and that apparently his previous deduction about the truth of Dragon Lake Village was indeed wrong. The real villager says that a mountain is not great because of its height, but because of the immortal who resides there, and water is not special because of its depth, but because of the dragon dwelling within it. For generations, the people of Dragon Lake Village had always believed in and worshipped the dragon god in the lake. However, they only knew that there was a dragon in the lake, but they did not know that the dragon had already died. He explains that the dragon was imprisoned in that lake, and after it died, its flesh and blood were slowly devoured by a fish that lived there, until only that skeleton remained. And the fish that ate the dragon's flesh gained an extraordinary fate, gradually growing stronger over time. Even the other fish in that lake were affected by it, turning into intelligent fish monsters. However, they never noticed the changes until that day. Since he was the village chief, he led everyone to Dragon Lake, as always, to perform the ritual of worshipping the dragon god. Unexpectedly, countless fish monsters leaped out of the lake and dragged all the villagers into the water. Then the fish monsters tore off their skin and wore it, leaving the bottom of the lake to go outside and replace them. And they, the real villagers, were forced to wear the fish monster's skin and were trapped there forever. Ching is shocked to discover that it is true and that the villagers in that village are actually fish monsters wearing human skin, while the fish monsters inside the lake are humans wearing fish skin. The system informs the protagonist that he has successfully completed the hidden side mission and, because of that, gained 200 reward points. Xinghe walks over to the dragon skeleton and thinks that everything fits together, and it seems that Ling Zuzi was actually his teammate and that he may really have been a priest, but apparently he was also caught by the fish monsters, and now a fish monster is wearing his skin. The system is able to identify the dragon bones, saying that they are S rank. The protagonist thinks that based on his earlier experience of borrowing the dragon trapping chain, those bones might also be an obtainable item or material, but he did not expect them to be S rank. He uses his abilities to collect the entire dragon carcass, and the villagers are astonished, wondering how the bones of such a huge dragon can simply disappear into thin air. They question whether the protagonist really managed to take it because it seems that those two are not ordinary people and may actually be there to save them. Xinghe looks at the village chief and asks him to keep talking and not worry about that situation. The chief says that it was not only them, mere mortals, who suffered, because even the queen of the forest, the unmatched great nine-tailed fox demon, was deceived by the fish monsters. They recovered the dragon trapping chain from the bottom of that lake, which had originally been used to imprison the dragon, and they captured the nine-tailed fox with it. Ching becomes curious and asks the chief to wait a moment because the fish monsters captured them in order to switch skins and become human, so they could leave Dragon Lake and go to the surface. But she would like to know why they captured the nine-tailed fox. One of the villagers says that the answer is very simple. The Fish King, who was the one that ate the dragon's corpse, wants to become a true dragon. Merely consuming the nutrients of a dragon corpse is not enough to complete the metamorphosis from fish to dragon. He needs to consume more dragons. The dragon imprisoned at the bottom of that lake had an embryo inside it before it died. The Fish King collected that embryo and injected it into the nine-tailed fox with the intention of using her body to hatch the young dragon. An ordinary body is too weak for that, but the nine-tailed fox is different. She is strong enough to hatch several dragon embryos at the same time. Ching asks whether it is possible that what came out of that dead man's stomach was not a monster, but actually a baby dragon. And apparently the Fish King was also experimenting with other bodies to incubate embryos. But it was a failed attempt, and the young dragon could not form properly, which is why it looked like a monster. The protagonist finally realizes how he was infected, because he'd found it strange how that woman had been won over so easily, even though they had never met before. That is exactly why she had been so willing, since it was not just desire, because she clearly wanted to transfer the young dragon embryos into his body. He remembers that after kissing her several times, her favorability did not increase, but that could have been because she had already transferred all the dragon embryos into his body, and that possibly means he is going to end up dried out and roasted. The system appears, saying that the host has confirmed the presence of young dragon embryos in the body and can spend 1,000 reward points to convert them into dragon blood factor or a hybrid form. He looks at his options and cannot really understand them, but apparently he will stop being human. The system says that an optional side mission has been activated called the Villager's Hope. The first mission is rescue. He needs to save the villagers of the village, and the reward is 1,000 experience points, in addition to a mysterious reward. And the second mission is extermination. He needs to eliminate the imposters who are the real monsters. Ching asks the protagonist to look carefully into the eyes of those villagers because they're waiting for him to save them, and even a side mission has been activated. Xinghe thinks for a moment about that situation and concludes that he is currently in an extremely complicated position, as if he were trying to cross a river and could not make it across. So how can he save these people? He gets an idea and asks what they are waiting for, because he has a very bold plan, but he needs everyone's cooperation. Meanwhile, Ling Suzy went to the fox, saying that all those strangers should have already been eliminated and now only she remains. On top of that, it is almost time for the young embryos in her body to hatch. He points out that as long as he can eat the dragon hatchlings that she is incubating, he will finally be able to become a true dragon. Daji gets irritated and asks what kind of ability that Fish King has besides smelling like rotten shrimp, because if he really has courage, he only needs to remove those chains so they can have a fair duel. Ling Suzy grabs her face and starts mocking her, telling her not to get angry because it is not good to harm the fetal IQ since he would not want the young dragons to be born dead. Suddenly the chain breaks and she unleashes all her power, questioning how he dares to mock her. Because she is the great demon, the unmatched queen of the Forest of Green Hills, so how can she endure such humiliation from such an insignificant being? She points out that even if she exhausts all her power, she will fight that idiot until the fish are completely destroyed. Ling Suzy is shocked and asks how that is possible, how she managed to free herself from the chains that even imprisoned a dragon. On top of that, the young dragon embryos inside her body have been absorbing her power as nourishment, so she should be weak. Even Daji was confused, asking how she managed to break those chains, until she finally realizes that it was the protagonist, because he had already switched the dragon trapping chain. She becomes so excited by that situation, saying that he is a mischievous person, because he had already saved her and then locked her up again, making her mistakenly believe that she was still imprisoned, and that he is nothing but a little rogue who likes playing sneaky tricks, and that makes her like him even more. The system reports that her favorability has increased by 20%, and the current progress has already reached 50%. Meanwhile, outside on the surface, the protagonist is surprised to run into Iwan. The young man tells Xinghe that his name is not Hei, but Iwan, but the protagonist tells him to stop talking nonsense and listen to the plan. He explains that Iwan needs to go to the lake, find Qing, and as soon as he gets there, he needs to do something. The protagonist explains the plan exactly and thinks that personally he cannot do that, so he has to use that lunatic. Once everything is settled, the protagonist stays behind, saying that he will deal with those monsters. Iwan thanks him and says that he understood exactly what he needs to do, so he will carry out the plan. The protagonist thinks that he owes Qing an apology, but for the sake of the plan, he is going to have to make things a little harder for her. Sometime later back at the lake, Qing was running and all the monsters were chasing him. He wondered if that guy had managed to complete the task, but as he got closer, he was amazed, saying that it was a masterpiece. Qing was crying, asking Xinghe to save her immediately. She says that she followed his instructions exactly and waited for Iwan to carry out the plan, but she did not expect that bastard to tie her up there and simply run away. Xinghe leaps over to help her, asking where that guy went. As soon as Xinghe grabs onto Qing, she becomes embarrassed, saying that there was no way she could have known he would do that, but she would really like to understand why the protagonist is clinging to her instead of saving her. Xinghe explains that this is his real plan, although he did not imagine that guy would tie her up like that. He looks down and sees that the fishmen are avoiding getting close, but that was already expected, and he needs to provoke them a little more to make them take the bait. Xinghe starts hugging Qing even more tightly, and she asks what exactly he is trying to do. While caressing her, he says that her shoulders are very soft and smell very nice, and that she also has a slim and very smooth waist. He looks at the monsters and says that she is very soft, asking if they are sure they would not like to have a taste, because that delicious treat is hanging right there, and all they have to do is take it. Qing becomes worried and asks him to be a somewhat more decent human being because apparently she judged him wrong. The temptation is too great and the monsters leap forward to try to grab her. Because of that, the protagonist laughs, thinking that the fish finally took the bait. He shouts to the real villagers that the time for revenge has finally come. The villagers leap out from inside the lake, grabbing the monsters by the legs and dragging them into the water. The protagonist says that the most cunning hunters often appear in the form of prey. He points out that if the fish monsters were able to capture the villagers and switch their skins, then why could the villagers not capture the fish monsters and switch their skins back? The system reports that he successfully completed the side mission in full and, because of that, gained 1,640 reward points. Ching asks if that was the plan all along and points out that he does not do anything himself and lets everyone else do the dirty work for him. Yet with that kind of thinking, he really is a carbon-based life form. Meanwhile, Ling Suzy was fleeing from the fox because she is an unmatched great demon who must not be underestimated. Previously, he had managed to deceive her using his disguise of human skin, which allowed him to capture her with the dragon-trapping chain. On top of that, he is still not fully transformed into a dragon, so it is better to avoid fighting her directly, otherwise he may be eliminated. He runs to the edge of a lake and starts questioning why she managed to free herself from the dragon-trapping chain and whether it is possible that she is even stronger than the legendary dragon. While he was resting a little after running so much, she appears and asks where else he thinks he can run because it is time to settle the score. Ling Suzy calls for his fish descendants and all of them begin to come out from the bushes. He asks how they are supposed to settle the score because she probably still does not know, but everyone in that village has been replaced by his fish descendants. In other words, she is completely surrounded. But suddenly the protagonist appears and says that he is wrong and that the one surrounded there is him. Ling Suzy cannot believe that they are still alive, yet he starts laughing, asking what difference that makes because he already explained that everyone in that village is actually one of his fish. He orders his descendants to attack, telling them to tear everyone to pieces. Xinghe apologizes, saying that the truth is that the fish farm has been hired by him and orders everyone to attack. The villagers begin to charge at Ling Suzy. He becomes confused, asking what everyone is doing and why they are listening to a human, saying that this is rebellion. Seeing that there was nothing else to do, he jumps into the water, thinking that he originally valued his true form very much and did not want it to suffer any damage. But now, he can no longer care about that. All of this is that brat's fault, and once he returns to his true form, he will take revenge. The system reports to the protagonist that the Great Fox Demon's favorability has increased once again by 20%, and that he now has a total of 70%. Daji holds him with one of her tails and asks how he managed to do that, how all of Ling Suzy's subordinates started obeying him. She points out that she cannot see through the protagonist, and because of that, she is becoming more and more curious about him. She points out that Xinghe is probably still hiding many secrets because she also has many and asks whether he would like to have a deep exchange with her, since they would be honest with each other, trading secret for secret and carefully seeing through one another. At the bottom of the lake, Ling Suzy sees all of his descendants being wiped out and becomes furious. Meanwhile, up above, Daji hugs Xinghe, asking what is wrong and whether he is shy, because if he wants, she can help him undress, since that shy and pretended resistance only makes her want him even more. Xinghe tells her to stop immediately because they are in the middle of something serious. Suddenly, the Fish King comes out of the water in his true form. He calls the protagonist a foolish human and points out that what is happening there has nothing to do with him, so they can go their separate ways. On top of that, he only allowed his offspring to switch skins and did not directly kill the villagers, so why is the protagonist insisting on wiping them all out? Ling Suzy asks whether Xinghe has ever heard the old saying about when a cycle of revenge will end, and questions whether the protagonist is really not worried about retaliation. Xinghe laughs and repeats the same saying, asking when a cycle of revenge will end. He points out that to end a cycle of revenge, one must not give the enemy a chance to retaliate, and because of that, he needs to wipe them all out without leaving any room for mercy. So eliminating the Fish King species is precisely to prevent retaliation and new skin swapping. Ling Suzy, already completely enraged, says that the protagonist is the one who caused all of this, and now they will have to fight to the death. He launches his attack, but Daji transforms into her true form and asks the Fish King whether he really dares to touch the man she has her eye on. She points out that the protagonist is her exclusive prey, but Ching also gets jealous and asks what made her think that he is exclusive to her. Xinghe tells Ching to stop that because the problem is not the word exclusive, but the word prey. Daji also attacks, and the two attacks collide, but her attack is overwhelmingly stronger and breaks through, hitting the wall behind and causing a huge hole. Ching asks whether they already won with just one attack, but the fox says not yet because the enemy's aura has not disappeared. Suddenly, the waters surge toward her, managing to trap her and drag her into the water. Ling Suzy starts laughing and tells the fox that he has to admit that she is very powerful and that if he had let her gather her energy in that forest, he would not have had the slightest chance of being her opponent. However, he would like to know whether she understands the reason he chose to keep his true body in Dragon Lake. He points out that it is because of the geographical advantage, because it all comes down to that. Water is his domain, and by fighting the fox's fire there, he will be invincible. And now it is time to seek retaliation. The village chief says that the protagonist has already done more than enough for them and begs him to leave, because even if it costs all of them their lives, they will hold the monster back so that he can escape. He calls out to all the villagers, saying that it is time to repay the favor their benefactor has done for them. All the villagers tell him to run, but the protagonist only smiles and, with a strange aura, charges rapidly toward the Fish King. The villagers become a little upset at that, thinking that the benefactor has definitely given up his chance to survive and is still trying to risk his life to save everyone. Ling Suzy comments that humans are usually despicable and selfish, but on the other hand, the protagonist is quite unexpected, although he would like to know whether he should call him a fool or praise his courage. The Fish King prepares to attack and says that Xinghe is a ruthless person and can still be considered a respectable opponent. But it is a pity that the difference in strength between them is like the difference between clouds and mud, and to show respect, he will end that fight with his full power attack. But Xinghe says that for the fight to be any fun, he will have to reduce his strength, otherwise the Fish King will be killed in seconds. Ling Suzy feels belittled and asks whether the protagonist is really saying that he is going to fight calmly and whether this is some kind of joke, because even at death's door, that idiotic human still dares to brag. Xinghe decides to fight the shark underwater to make the battle more interesting. Li goes over to her grandfather, the village chief, asking whether Xinghe is something beyond what he appears to be. The real village chief starts walking back and forth and finally says that he understands the situation because the benefactor probably knew that he could not win the fight, but did not want to be humiliated by the enemy in front of them and, because of that, chose to jump into the water to end his life. He shouts to everyone that that boy faced death without fear, so why are they holding back? He orders that everyone must join the benefactor and must not suffer the humiliation of that evil spirit again. Qing tries to stop them, saying that everyone has misunderstood something because she does not think things are necessarily the way they are imagining. The Fish King realizes that although his opponent is a little foolish, he still has some self-awareness, but the situation has become very boring because now he has no worthy opponent at all. As soon as the village chief gets close to the lake, he tells everyone to wait because something is wrong. All the water in the lake begins to spin, creating a huge whirlpool in the center, and the Fish King asks what is happening. Xinghe had bought a well drilling machine with 200 reward points and left Aiwan hidden inside it to drill a well and lower the lake's water level. The protagonist had noticed that the waterfall above Dragon Lake flows continuously, but the lake itself had not expanded, so he imagined that there must be an underground river below, allowing the water to drain continuously. Because of that, he arranged for that well drilling machine and told Aiwan to open the underground river earlier and release a massive amount of water at the right moment. Xinghe looks at Ling Suzy and says that all the water has already drained away, asking how he is going to deal with that now. The Fish King thinks that this boy is a terrible loser because he is letting all the water escape. Ling Suzy rushes forward, calling the protagonist a despicable outsider, and says that he had already expected this, and that he never should have let the protagonist live. However, if he thinks he has won like this, he is gravely mistaken, because the difference in strength between them is still the same as between a god and an ant, and it will not change just because the geographical advantage has changed. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and tricks are meaningless, so crushing Xinghe is as easy as crushing an ant. The protagonist asks who said that he would be the opponent there. He asks Daji how long she's going to keep lying there pretending to be dead. The fox stands up, laughing, saying that she originally wanted to see the protagonist feel a little sad for her, acting as if she were dying, but she did not expect that he had already seen through it. Xinghe asks who is supposed to act as if they are dying because they are nowhere near that point. She laughs, saying that when he talks like that, even she feels a little sad. Ling Suzy keeps laughing and asks whether that fox demon is the protagonist's familiar, questioning whether he really thinks she can save him because that is ridiculous. He points out that the fox's nature is fire and that even if she was not eliminated after being drenched in water, her demonic power would be greatly reduced. And although he has lost the geographical advantage, his demonic power has not decreased. So how can she fight him? Daji agrees and tells the protagonist that at the moment she is no match for that creature, so they should find a way to escape to the mountains. As the queen of the forest, she can gather the spiritual energy of the mountains, and if she manages to do that, her power will increase several times over, and that way she will be able to destroy him instantly. Ling Suzy asks whether they really think he is stupid enough to let them escape to the mountains. He points out that the pit where the lake used to be will now be the two of their grave. Xinghe says that he understands the situation, and because of that, he will help her loosen the soil. She is surprised to see that he is still thinking about that at a moment like this. But she agrees, saying that if everyone is going to die, then she will satisfy him one last time. She gets ready, saying that they do not have much time. Xinghe grabs her by the shoulders and asks her to wait a moment, questioning where exactly her thoughts are going because his words always mean exactly what they say. He tells her to get out of there immediately so she will not be buried alive, and presses the detonator, causing a huge explosion. The Fish King emerges from the middle of the rubble, asking how that is possible, because the protagonist said he would release the water and all the water was released. Then he said he would loosen the soil and the soil was loosened, and he wonders whether this is the legendary power of words. He stands up, asking whether that boy is still human. Xinghe, who was already far away from that place, thinks that this is not any power of words at all, because he had simply exchanged for some explosives from the system shop when he went into the water earlier and buried them above the cliff. But Daji had also heard about the power of words and began gathering her strength, thinking that she did not expect the protagonist to be so important, and that made her want him even more. The system sends another notification saying that the favorability of the great female demon, the nine-tailed fox who destroyed the world, has risen by 10%, reaching 80%. After gathering her energy, her true power awakens. She transforms once again, telling that walking lizard that the situation has changed drastically, and now she is quite curious to see how long a fish like him can keep fighting out of water. Ling Suzi panics at all that power and asks the queen to wait a moment, saying that he knows he was wrong and that for the good of all living beings, she needs to spare him. But suddenly, a few drops of water begin to fall in that place. The Fish King shouts that it is raining and says that apparently the heavens are helping him. Daji gets irritated, asking how that could have happened. She attacks, thinking that she needs to finish it as quickly as possible, but the Fish King manages to dodge all of her attacks and starts laughing, saying that he thought he was doomed that time, yet he did not expect even the heavens to be on his side, granting him that rootless water. So he truly is a fish favored by destiny. He keeps moving at an astonishing speed and attacking the fox, saying that as long as there is water, all of his attributes can continue improving. The fox begins to shrink in size, and the Fish King explains that she will continue losing energy because of the rain, and with one rising and the other falling, he can wear her down until she is eliminated. On top of that, even if he cannot devour enough young dragons to transform into a true dragon, he can still gather the chi of the rain to evolve into a form closer to that of a dragon. Jing says that he has just gained dragon scales and claws, but Xinghe says not yet because he is only changing. Ling Suzi states that this is not a change but an evolution, and asks how much longer it will be until he becomes a true dragon, because he has waited far too long and has grown impatient. So, on that day, he will devour the power of the young dragon cultivated inside the fox demon's body and ascend to become a dragon. He tries to absorb the dragon power inside her, saying that destiny is on his side. His transformation begins, but he turns completely bizarre, and he questions what happened and why he ended up like that, because he clearly devoured enough power from the young dragons. So he should have transformed successfully. So why is this happening? Iwan starts laughing, saying that the fish has quite a unique form. Ching thinks it is so ugly that she gets scared, saying that this form is very abstract, questioning what happened there. Xinghe starts to smile, asking whether they already forgot that Daji sent the young dragon embryos into his body. Xinghe tells Daji that Ling Suzi failed to transform into a dragon, and now it is time for her to finish this. But as soon as he looks at her, he realizes that she has turned back into a little fox. He's startled by the situation and asks who that little puppy is. Ling Suzi, who was completely enraged, asks who said that he failed to transform into a dragon, because he refuses to accept that situation. He stresses that he did not fail, because that is what a true dragon should look like. And the protagonist is wrong. That entire world is wrong. He uses the Ray of Death corruption, which begins attacking all the people around him. As soon as the black beam hits those people, their bodies begin to mutate, turning into monsters. Ling Suzi laughs at the situation, saying that as long as he corrupts everyone, that entire world and his species will recognize a true dragon, because he is fate and also death, so only he has the right to decide that. The villagers are desperate, saying that everyone must run so they are not struck by that light, or they will all be turned into monsters. Ling Suzi looks at the protagonist, calls him an insect, and tells him to crawl because it is all his fault that Ling Suzi ended up like that, so he will be personally corrupted. He launches his attack and asks whether the protagonist would not like to protect those villagers, because now he will be turned into a monster so he can accompany them. As soon as he is hit, he will lose his self-awareness and become a walking corpse, and he will be a dog forever. The village deputy chief looks at the protagonist and shouts to all the villagers around him that their benefactor is in danger, and now it is time to repay the enormous favor he did for them, ordering everyone to form a human wall to protect him. The people run around the protagonist and end up being struck by the attack in his place. The deputy chief asks Xinghe if he is alright because they managed to repay his kindness, but now he needs to run immediately so he does not get hurt. They begin to transform while shouting for the protagonist to get out of there. Lingzuzi mocks the situation, saying that this trashy act of self-sacrifice is happening again, and it is very shocking. However, it will be useless because corrupting those villagers who originally wanted to protect the protagonist was only a bonus, because now he can make the villagers themselves attack the protagonist, and that will be more fun. Xinghe begins concentrating the energy in his body, thinking that at this moment there is nothing he can do except take the risk, even if that means he can no longer remain human. The system warns that he consumed 1,000 reward points and successfully transformed the young dragon embryo inside the host into dragon blood factors. The host will become a hybrid dragon species. Xinghe begins to transform, and the system says that he has acquired the profession's exclusive basic skill, dragon scale transformation. He is surprised by this new ability, which uses his powers to create an egg around each villager. Dragon scales are one of the hardest substances in the world, and weapons below S rank cannot damage them. Lingzuzi keeps laughing and asks if that is all, if he was planning something grand, a move that could impress. But apparently nothing is going to happen. Xinghe is confused as he looks at his own hand because he has just awakened an S rank profession, and he wonders whether he really has no offensive abilities. The system appears and explains that the level of the awakened profession represents the profession's potential, but the host's current strength is far too low to unlock abilities beyond the basic ones. Qing asks him why he does not put everyone inside the dragon scale egg, because that way they can survive that night together, and they can still complete the main mission and return to the real world. But the protagonist questions what the surviving villagers will do after they leave. While the two are talking, Iwan looks at the dragon egg and asks what that ball is. He gets ready to kick it and awakens an A-rank profession, Giant Spirit Gene Lock Stage 2. He laughs and says that he was once known as the boy Roberto Carlos and tells them to get ready. He kicks the egg so hard that he sends it flying at astonishing speed. Qing is amazed to see that her teammate can kick such a huge dragon egg like that. But the protagonist says that it is not exactly like that, because that is the power of a profession. He thinks that he did not expect Iwan to also be a transcendent, with a strength-oriented profession. The egg quickly heads toward Lingzuzi, who is surprised and asks what kind of attack move that is, then attacks trying to break the egg, but it is useless, and the egg hits him head-on. Qing celebrates, saying that it worked very well, even if the attacks and movements are not conventional. Ali calls out to the protagonist and says that she also wants to turn into a dragon egg because she wants to avenge the village chief. The other villagers also agree with her, saying that they could be transformed as well. He says that it is fine and begins creating dragon scales around all of them. Iwan asks if now he is supposed to take penalty kicks because this is very fun. Ali, who is inside the egg, says that she is going to smash that idiot dragon to death. Iwan keeps having fun with the situation, using Titanic strength and the iron groin shot, launching the three of them at the same time and hitting his target squarely. Lingzuzi, who's in great pain, asks that despicable outsider what kind of attack that is. Because it should be impossible, how could he lose to such an abstract attack when that is already a humiliation? Qing says that it is all a matter of being abstract. That attack move is so far ahead of its time and so incredible. She asks whether Iwan only looks crazy and is actually a hidden big shot. Lingzuzi is lying on the ground, and the protagonist approaches him. He begs the protagonist to wait just 1 minute, asking Xinghe to let him go because he was confused for a moment. Now he can see who the protagonist is, a great person, so he can pretend that fish never existed in that world. Xinghe says that he can agree with half of that. Lingzuzi asks which half. The protagonist points his weapon and fires, saying that he no longer exists in that world. The system appears and says that he managed to complete the hidden mission of eliminating Lingzuzi and earned 1,000 reward points. In addition, he obtained the Lingzuzi relic, mutant dragon blood with a purity of 54%. Xinghe thinks that he already knew eliminating that guy would definitely grant extra reward points. He just did not expect that he would also obtain equipment, and that is a pleasant surprise. A short while later, the villagers go to the protagonist and say that Dragon Lake Village suffered that calamity, but fortunately the benefactor intervened to save everyone, and all the deceased dreamed of that river, and the living will pass the torch among these ancient mountains and rivers, raising statues and spreading the story of the benefactor, forever remembering that great kindness. They bow before the protagonist, thanking him from the bottom of their hearts for everything he did. Xinghe feels a little uncomfortable, thinking that he has never seen a scene like that before, and wonders whether he should say something to the villagers because he does not know what to say. The little fox jumps into the protagonist's arms and he thinks that she appeared again. wondering whether she belongs to someone in that village and got lost. Daji thinks that from beginning to end, the protagonist showed no fear while facing the Demon King Ling Suzi. In addition, he also showed no reaction to the villagers' worship, which proves that he really is incredible and far beyond them, so she likes him even more. The system says that the favorability of the unrivaled great demon, the nine-tailed fox, increased by 20%, reaching a total of 100%. The Fatal Beauty Compendium has been activated and the host can summon her at any time. He only needs to enter the compendium and awaken the profession corresponding to her. The system shows that she is an unrivaled S-rank great demon. In Qingqiu, there are nine-tailed foxes, originally women of the forest, with the means and power to destroy a nation, possessing incomparable beauty when in human form. Known as the unrivaled great demon, the queens throughout the generations receive the same name, Daji. So she is not really one person, but a name passed down from generation to generation. Xinghe questions whether the system had not said that he could awaken a profession after successfully conquering Daji, because he would like to know what profession corresponds to her. The system says that he managed to awaken a second profession, the S-rank profession called Illusionist Non-Evolved Gene. He asks what kind of profession that is. The system explains that it is a specialist in using illusions and fleeting abilities to confuse and deceive enemies, while also being capable of combining illusion and reality to keep a clear mind in complex battle scenarios. He thinks about the non-evolved genes, but when he awakened his first dragon-related profession earlier, that was also noted, and he does not know what it really means. However, that is not so important right now because he can find out more later. He goes over to the villagers and asks where Ali is. The villagers are a little confused and say that the little girl was there just a moment ago but suddenly disappeared completely. The sun begins to set and she is hiding behind a tree, crying. Xinghe manages to find her and asks why she is there alone. She explains that everyone is happy because they defeated Ling Suzi and managed to survive. But she is sad because she knows that Grandpa, the village chief, and the others will never come back again. On top of that, she knows that even he is already leaving and she keeps crying. Xinghe is moved by the situation and uses his ability, asking her to look behind her. He spends 100 reward points to create an illusion. She sees the village chief, says that this is immortal magic, and asks if he is an immortal who came from the heavens. With tears running down her face but a smile on it, she runs toward her grandfather to hug him. The protagonist only watches this, thinking that it is not immortal magic, because death is not a joke, and without power, once a person dies, they are nothing anymore. But those who are alive need hope and must keep living well. She tries to hug her grandfather, but passes right through him. She gets confused and asks Grandpa what happened to him and why she cannot touch him, and whether it is because he has some strange illness. The image of the village chief begins to float, telling her to be well, because he is also doing very well. He asks her to remember to eat properly, and from now on, not to kick off the blanket at night while sleeping because he is going on a long journey and she must take very good care of herself. He asks if she understands and says goodbye to her. She starts crying again as she watches her grandfather's image slowly disappear. She begs him not to go away because she has not grown up yet and still has so much to tell him. But the image simply disappears before her eyes, and she falls to her knees on the ground again, screaming for him. Xinghe goes to her and tries to comfort her, telling her to be well because he is also almost ready to leave, so she must be well and grow up strong. The system says that the main mission of surviving in that village for 3 days has been completed, and he has earned 1,000 reward points. And now, he is returning. The system's light appears to take him away, and with a smile, he says goodbye to her. Ali says that he does not need to lie to her anymore, because she already knows everything. And the truth is that the village chief is already dead, and that is why he can never come back. But even so, she was very happy to be able to see him again and thanks the protagonist for giving her that experience. She also says goodbye to him, and with that, the light takes him back. The system says that no damage was detected in the destined person's body, so no repair is necessary. The angel, who had been watching all of that, laughs and says that after the last team was almost completely wiped out, she thought there was no hope left. However, she did not expect those new recruits to be so good. Half of them really survived. The 3 of them are taken to a rather strange place. Ching asks what place that is, because they should have returned to the real world. The protagonist looks ahead and sees a sphere, wondering if that is some kind of magical altar. Iwan says that it is a girl and that she loves being touched, and that as long as he touches her, she will give lots of good things. Ching is confused and asks whether he really calls a ball of light a girl. Iwan touches the sphere and exchanges 1,000 reward points for some marbles, saying that now he can play with them. Ching explains that the ball of light actually speaks with a female voice. But the protagonist still thinks that it is a little strange, because the main issue should be that that guy traded 1,000 reward points for only 10 marbles. He explains to her that the ball of light is probably some kind of exchange system, so he suggests that the two of them put their hands there and try it. The sphere says that it has detected the destined person's first contact with the Book of Illumination. The ranking is based on performance during the release, and the final rank is B. With that, she has acquired a B rank gene. Genetic sequence replacement is in progress. The replacement was successful, beginning profession selection. The destined person carefully chose every step. The destined person can only obtain one profession. The sphere's wings begin to cover Qing's body, leaving Iwan surprised by that. Suddenly, she appears completely different, and the sphere says that the selection has been completed. The B-rank profession has been completed, called Doctor of Evil, but the gene has not yet evolved. The Doctor of Evil specializes in creating various medicines and strange formulas, some of which have miraculous effects, while others are full of side effects. The protagonist thinks that the so-called profession change is replacing their original genes with some kind of mysterious genes. Now he understands why his two profession changes were marked as genes not yet evolved. That means that through genetic evolution, he can become even stronger and acquire new abilities. Qing looks at her new appearance and is impressed, because all of a sudden she has gained a great deal of medical knowledge that did not belong to her. Qing asks what kind of profession the protagonist awakened, but he just stays silent. She gets angry and says that he is being very stingy and does not want to tell her, even though they already went through all that before. However, she adds that if he does not want to say it, then he should not, because that does not matter. What she really wants to see is what else that sphere of light can do. Xinghe thinks that she is right because the sphere of light did not let him choose a profession. Besides, he did not understand what Qing meant when she said they had already gone through all that before, because they had just kissed, and she makes it sound like they did even more. Xinghe looks at Iwan and realizes that he also did not receive a profession selection prompt when he touched the sphere of light. That means the two of them have something in common, because they successfully completed profession changes inside that village, so that could be the reason. But apparently, with the Scroll of Beauties, maybe he can change professions infinitely. Qing keeps touching the sphere and is impressed, saying that the sphere of light can really exchange almost anything she wants, including things that exist and things that do not exist in the real world. As long as she has enough reward points, she can exchange absolutely anything she wants. She looks at the protagonist and he asks if there is something wrong with his face. She turns away and says no, then says that while they were inside that village, he used to pull out pistols and other weapons, along with some other things, because he was able to do all that thanks to the system shop. The protagonist says that is exactly right and asks if there is some problem with that. Qing argues with him, saying that he was lying because she tried, and it was impossible to use any kind of shop from the other world. But when she touched the sphere of light just now, the sphere also suggested that items, weapons, and everything else can only be exchanged through the sphere of light after completing the mission and returning to the temporary dimension. Xinghe is shocked and thinks that this could only be because of the Scroll of Beauties, because the scroll may have stolen some permissions from the sphere of light, allowing him to use the shop to exchange items at any time. The sphere of light congratulates the three of them for successfully completing that mission and surviving. In addition, it points out that the next mission will begin again in 3 days. But before the next mission begins, they can choose to remain in that dimension or return to the real world. Iwan keeps looking at his new items, thinking that this is very fun. Qing points out that she has no relatives or friends in the real world, so she intends to stay there and study things a little more. Xinghe says that is fine, but he needs to return. In addition, he looks at Qing and asks how she can say she has no friends in the real world and asks whether she really does not consider him part of her life. That makes her blush. Qing thinks that her heart is beating very fast because the protagonist is a very kind person. But as soon as he disappears, she shouts angrily that she does not want to be just his friend. Xinghe slowly begins to open his eyes, and the girl who had mistaken him earlier is still looking at him, saying that she thought he had suddenly had a heart attack or something like that and died. She asks if he is okay, but the protagonist does not answer, because he is still a little disoriented. The girl's boyfriend asks why she thought he was going to die because it is not like he was in a car accident. He points out that maybe that guy is just trying to extort money and suddenly fell to the ground. The woman asks her boyfriend to calm down a little because the protagonist did nothing wrong since she was the one who identified him incorrectly. But her boyfriend remains irritated and says that he had just gone out and found someone dressed the same way as him and trying to extort money, and that is very irritating. Xinghe gets to his feet thinking that he has just returned and, apparently, no time has passed in the real world, which means that the hours in the other world are not synchronized with those in the real world. On top of that, neither of those two saw the heavy armored knight from earlier except for him alone. He wonders what Ching said before he returned to the real world because he could not hear it clearly, but he thinks that it does not matter, since he can ask her the next time they meet because he is very happy to have come back alive, and now he should go to the hospital to see how his sister is doing. But suddenly a truck comes speeding toward them, and the woman from before cries out for help. Shinka thinks that this is the perfect moment because he was just looking for an opportunity to test his second profession. He creates a transformation illusion, making a huge rhinoceros. The system appears before him, saying that the illusionist's basic skill, transformation, has two variations. The first is to directly transform into another creature, which can deceive and confuse enemies, and he can gain 50% of the original creature's characteristic attributes. The second is to transform into a spiritual body, in other words, to project a spiritual body outward without changing his own form. By doing that, he gains 70% of the original creature's characteristic attributes. Thus, he is able to stop the truck with ease. But the girl he saved thinks that the protagonist is incredibly handsome. She is already completely smitten, being held by a real man. The girl's boyfriend gets irritated by that and curses at the protagonist, asking how much longer he is going to keep holding his baby. Shinghe lets go of the girl and simply starts walking away. The truck driver says that that boy managed to stop a truck with his bare hands and wonders whether he's even human. The girl falls to the ground with shining eyes, and her boyfriend approaches, asking if she's all right. The girl thinks that even the way the protagonist set her down and walked away is very handsome, and she is about to reach her limit. As soon as he arrives at the hospital, an announcement is being broadcast saying that summer the global climate has been extremely abnormal. Southeast Asian countries have been suffering from prolonged droughts, with fields cracking apart. The Middle East, however, has suffered floods caused by torrential rain. The protagonist goes to his sister's side and wonders when she is finally going to wake up. This leaves him worried because if one day he cannot return alive from the other world, then his sister will have no one left to take care of her. The report continues saying that the United States has experienced the coldest summer in history. The protagonist looks at the TV and is startled, asking whether that ghostly monster is an ice-type monster. And it seems that, just like the heavy armored knight he encountered before, only he can see it. Suddenly, someone on the other side of the curtain wakes up, saying that he slept very well and that Big Brother has finally arrived, because apparently they all seem to have been chosen children. Shinghe realizes that the voice sounds familiar, and as soon as he pulls back the curtain, he sees that it really is Iwan, and asks what he is doing there and whether he is also a hospital patient. Iwan says no and points out that he came from the building next door. The protagonist is confused because the building next door to the hospital is a mental asylum. He asks whether Iwan is a doctor from the place next door. He explains that his sister has not been able to wake up and that it may be related to her brain nerves. So he asks whether Iwan was assigned to treat her. The protagonist says that now he can understand why that guy is always acting like a lunatic, because apparently he spent too much time around mentally ill patients and ended up becoming like that himself. But Iwan says that is not the case, because the doctor there said that he is a patient and even gave him a certificate, asking whether the protagonist would like to see it. Long Yue, deputy director of the Special Affairs Directorate, enters the room and asks who Shinghe is. The protagonist introduces himself and asks who she is. The woman introduces herself, saying that she is from the Special Affairs Bureau and that her name is Long Yue. She explains that she is there to clarify a few things for him and then carry out an evaluation of his profession transfer level. She asks him to cooperate with her work and asks whether he can see those ghostly monsters on the news, because ordinary people cannot see them, only the chosen can. Long Yue points out that they are all projections of the power of monsters that are about to invade that world, and they are the ones causing all kinds of bizarre disasters. Only by entering another world and completing missions can they stop the invasion, and if the mission fails, the monsters materialize and that area will face ruin. She points out that the protagonist had probably already come into contact with the ghostly monsters that were about to invade that area before he crossed over to the other world. Shinghe is surprised and asks whether the monster that is about to invade that area is the heavy armored knight he saw. However, he asks her to wait a moment because that must be wrong, since he did not see that heavy armored knight inside Dragon Village. Long Yue questions how that is possible because the other world he entered should be the dimension where the monsters are located. Iwan is eating a piece of meat, saying that the aroma is delicious. He asks the protagonist whether he wants to take a bite of that juicy, plump horse leg. Shinghe cannot believe that it could be. Iwan cuts him off and laughs, saying that he had been wandering outside the village and found someone riding a horse. However, he was very hungry at the time and the rider was not giving him any food, so he knocked the rider down and borrowed his horse. And that is how he got that delicacy. The protagonist remembers that on the first day, that guy had said he did not enter the village, So everything suddenly makes sense, and apparently, he had already defeated the true boss of that place. Long Yue says that now everything has been explained and they need to proceed with the test. They open a box and she explains that the protagonist needs to place his hand on that cube because it will measure his power level and emit a different light based on his profession transfer level. Xinghe says that is fine and begins taking the test. As soon as he touches the cube, the thing starts to react. Long Yue is pleased to see that the cube reacted and thinks that it was worth coming there personally to test him, because as her younger brother's sibling, he should at least be a B-level transfer, or even an A-level one. But suddenly the cube returns to normal and emits no light at all. The guards standing nearby say that this is impossible because it is the first time something like that has ever happened. The protagonist gets a little excited, saying that apparently he is a once-in-a-lifetime genius. But the deputy director says that he is just useless because even the lowest rank emits a white light and he really is the world's first F rank. She becomes completely irritated, asking why she even created any expectations regarding him, since she even set aside time in her day to come test him personally. Irritated, she leaves the room and thinks that it was a complete waste of time. Originally, she thought that that boy might be a prodigy, since he is that girl's brother, so she came especially to lead the team, but she never expected that he would actually be nothing more than an unprecedented F-rank loser. One of her attendants asks whether they are no longer going to recruit that guy. She asks what they would even do with that boy, because the cube did not even light up. Should they really create an F-rank classification just for him, and make him a laughingstock for the other departments? But suddenly, an extremely strange and intense light begins to emanate from inside the briefcase. One of the agents notices it and asks the deputy director to wait because the cube is reacting. She senses an enormous pressure of energy and turns around, asking what exactly he just said because she would like to see it. As soon as the man opens the briefcase, several different shades of light begin to appear and all of a sudden the cube explodes. The man holding the briefcase says that this is very bad luck because that boy is not only a loser, but he also broke the testing cube. And from what the deputy director had said, the cost of that cube is comparable to that of a city. Long Yue thinks that if it were not for his sister, she would have beaten that boy black and blue. Meanwhile, inside the room, the protagonist wonders what all that commotion outside the room is about. However, he decides to let it go and looks inside the system, because if he remembers correctly, the heroine he conquered can be summoned at any time, and so he would like to test that. He asks Daji to come out and the fox appears. However, he does not know that that fox is Daji. He is surprised to see that fox and says that she probably managed to follow him into the modern world and asks where Daji is. Suddenly, a nurse opens the door and asks whether the protagonist is the brother of the patient in Ward 7, because the medical bills are overdue and need to be paid. He receives a phone call thinking that he had forgotten that he sent a business proposal and arranged a meeting with Mr. Ma, but ended up forgetting about it. He runs out of the hospital telling the nurse that he is counting on her to take very good care of his sister because he will pay everything as soon as he gets back, but right now, he has to go. He takes a taxi and heads to the Qingxi group. He gets out of the car thinking that as long as he can finalize the project with an investor, he will no longer have to worry about his sister's medical expenses, and he has to do well later. The guards ask the protagonist to stop and ask whether he has some kind of invitation. He says no, but the other guard asks whether he read the sign outside. The sign said that dogs were not allowed in. Daji gets angry and says that she is not a dog, and the protagonist asks the guards to stay calm because he could leave her outside. But suddenly someone arrives saying that this is something impressive and asks everyone not to be mistaken, because she must be and is probably back. The protagonist tells the guard to let them in, because he is not some random person. CEO Su invited him. But the guard mocks him, asking whether he really thinks he's someone important enough for the director to call him, because if it were anyone else, they might have been fooled. But the so-called Lin Zhiyin has been the senior security guard of the Qingxi group for 10 years, guarding that same gate. He asks the protagonist if he really thinks he has never seen the director of that group since she is a powerful woman and as cold as a 1,000-year iceberg. Xinghe says that he would like to finish his sentence because he is not saying that he is CEO Su, but that CEO Su invited him. But Lin Zhiyin remains irritated, saying that they are trying to cause trouble by pretending to be someone they are not, and asking how they dare come there to do this kind of thing, which is why they are asking for a real beating. The butler slaps the guard across the face, saying that he would like to see who dares. Ziyin asks the old butler what he is doing there and why he hit him. The butler says that he is hitting him because he is a foolish and inattentive idiot. The butler walks over to the protagonist and apologizes for the poor reception given to the distinguished guest. He asks the protagonist to be a little patient with them and invites him inside. The protagonist thanks him, but wonders what kind of show they are putting on. Could it be that the corporate cultures of big companies really are that avant-garde? The butler thinks that if the ancestor becomes angry, then the entire group will face a great disaster, and this matter is no longer something he can handle, so he must be the first to inform the young miss. Inside the company, one of the receptionists leads the protagonist to the correct floor. She says that this is the CEO's office and that she is currently in a meeting, so he can wait there. The protagonist is impressed because this was already what he expected from the leading company in that city, since even the office is large and luxurious. A man stands up, somewhat surprised, and the woman who brought the protagonist calls him Vice President Lee and explains that the protagonist said that the CEO invited him. The vice director starts laughing and says that if it were anyone else, they might have been fooled by the protagonist, but coincidentally, he happened to meet him there. Lee Ergu points out that he worked hard and fought within the Qingxi group for 10 years, just to finally secure that position as the group's vice president. The protagonist takes a deep breath, thinking that these lines sound a little familiar to him. Ergu sits down, saying that the protagonist claimed that the president had scheduled a meeting with him. However, he also points out that the president scheduled a meeting with Ergu, so how could she have scheduled a meeting with both of them? Xinghe asks the vice president whether he thinks there is a possibility that the matter the president wants to discuss with Ergu also involves him. The vice president says that is absolutely impossible. If the destined person is the president, then why would she arrange a meeting with someone like the protagonist? Ergu says that if the CEO scheduled a meeting with Xinghe, he will stand on his head and drink something that comes out from the rear. Xinghe stays quiet, thinking that it is fine because apparently that guy is only there to take advantage of the situation. Suddenly, the president enters the room, shouting and asking who dares say that kind of thing, because she would very much like to see who is so blind as to offend Mr. Yun. She is Su Qingyu, CEO of the Qingxi group. She walks over to the vice president and slaps him across the face, and the protagonist thinks that apparently this really is the corporate culture there. She and the butler bow to the protagonist, saying that they greet Mr. Yun and the ancestor. However, neither of them responds. Qingyu becomes a little doubtful and asks butler Zhao what is going on, because neither the protagonist nor the ancestor is reacting. Zhao explains to her that currently the ancestor is not in her human form, so she cannot speak the language of humans. He explains to her how they should communicate with the ancestor. Qingyu thinks that actually makes sense, and that the butler's considerations are indeed very thorough because the ancestor deliberately returned in that form because she does not want to attract too much attention. She thinks that she can understand a bit of the ancestor's intentions because she does not want to speak human language and reveal her true identity, so they must communicate in another way. The CEO begins to bark, leaving Xinghe and Daji speechless. Even the vice director cannot believe it and wonders whether this is what is called a master's touch, because apparently the president, who is as cold as a 1,000-year iceberg, was only pretending all this time and is actually very eccentric. They are so embarrassed that they put the protagonist outside, asking him to wait just 1 minute. Ergu, who had been looking down on the protagonist before, now wonders what kind of being he is, capable of training a woman as strong and cold as the president to do that. He definitely would never dare imagine that Mr. Yun was someone like that, and now he is his role model. He kneels and crawls before the protagonist, calling him master and begging him to accept his bow. Inside the office, the president keeps barking. Daji slaps her paw on the table and says, "That is enough, because 100 years have passed and the people of the Su family may be narrow-minded, but not that narrow-minded." She asks them all to remember clearly that she is a fox and not a dog. Both the butler and the president are completely terrified, saying that the ancestor finally spoke. However, they would like her to calm her anger a little. Qingyu explains that 100 years ago, the ancestor invaded the current world, but instead of destroying it, she granted great fortune to the Su family. So, without her, there would be no prosperous enterprise in the Su family's life. Daji says that it is fine because she does not need to return so much praise. She calls the president, saying that she needs her to do one thing. As soon as she explains everything, the president says that she will not fail the ancestor's trust. A little while later, she goes outside and tells the protagonist that she reviewed the entire proposal and is very satisfied, so their collaboration is underway. She thinks that the proposal is really very good, but there are still some areas that need to be discussed. However, that boy is the ancestor's person, so how could she voice any opinion about it? Daji jumps back into the protagonist's arms while he asks the president whether they need to sign any contract. Qingyu points out that there is no need because his matters are the Su family's matters. Therefore, the entire group is at his disposal, and there is no need for a mere piece of paper. The president begins to leave and asks the butler to take the protagonist home. Xinghe is surprised, thinking that this is a little impulsive. A short while later at daybreak, Zhao takes the protagonist to a mansion. but he's a little confused and asks whether they did not say they would take him to his home, because that is not his house. Zhao explains that now that will be the young master's house because Miss Qingyu has already bought it and transferred it into his name. As soon as the butler leaves the protagonist there, he drives off in a panic, asking him to rest early because he needs to go back and report all this to the young miss. Xinghe looks at his new house and thinks that originally the business group did not even sign a contract with him, so he imagined that they were just messing with him. But now he cannot fully understand it because they gave him an independent mansion, and that clearly is not just to fool him. He decides to enter his new house, thinking that one should not receive favors without merit, and wonders whether there is some trick behind all this. However, he decides to leave that for later because it is already getting very late and he needs to go inside, take a shower, and lie down to prepare for the next trip. As soon as he finishes his shower, he comes out and starts looking for where that fox went. However, he thinks the house is too big and it will be difficult to search everywhere, so he decides to sleep first because, in any case, the fox followed him from the other world, so she should be fine. But as soon as he enters the bedroom, Qingyu is lying on the bed, saying that he finally arrived, because she has been waiting for him for quite some time. She points out that on that day she ate a very delicious sweet, and because of that, she would like to share that flavor with him through her lips. Xinghe can barely get any words out. Qingyu thinks that the ancestor asked her to test the protagonist's character, but she has always been busy with her career and has never dated anyone, so she has absolutely no experience and does not know how she should test this kind of thing. So if she fails to do well, she truly hopes that the ancestor will not blame her. Qingyu continues trying to test him, asking what he is waiting for. Xinghe feels embarrassed and looks away, telling the president that if she really needs something from him, he will wait outside. So she can change clothes first and then they can discuss the details later. He thinks that he has neither money nor power, but that young lady is the president of the most important group in that place. So what could she possibly want with him? This is something out of the ordinary and must be a trick, so he will not fall into that kind of trap. But as he turns to leave, he ends up tripping over his towel and starts falling forward, thinking that this is not good. Xinghe falls very close to her, and Qingyu thinks that a man's words are the devil's lies because he is clearly impatient. The protagonist tries to explain himself, saying that it is not what she is thinking. And even though everyone always says that he has bad habits, like being lazy and libertine, then he has every problem, so he is not worth it for her. He thinks that the best strategy is to lower himself as much as possible, making her back off on her own. Qingyu blushes and thinks that Mr. Yun is distinguished, but he does not put on airs, saying such things directly to a junior as insignificant as her. And she must have misunderstood him. She puts a finger to his mouth and says that he is not lazy, nor arrogant, nor obsessed with beauty. She says that he is the old ancestor's feeder, so he was born to enjoy life, and whoever dares speak badly of him is simply rebellious. Daji jumps onto the protagonist's back, saying that he is a foolish ruler because he really cannot resist a test, and asks whether he believes such treacherous words. But Xinghe slaps the dog, telling her to get out of there, because he can tell loyalty from betrayal at first sight. And that girl is definitely a wonderful person. But Daji thinks that she needs to bite her foolish ruler so he will learn. The protagonist is surprised and asks how a dog really managed to speak human language. Daji keeps biting the protagonist's finger while sucking some of his energy. He starts to feel a little dizzy and ends up fainting. While losing consciousness, he managed to see the president asking the old ancestor what they should do now. Daji starts laughing, saying that now she has discovered that she can absorb the host's power to repair herself, so she will continue sucking it frequently and asks her subordinate to help her. 2 days later, the protagonist begins to wake up, thinking that his head feels very heavy, and asks himself how much time has passed while he was sleeping and why his limbs feel weak, as if his body had been drained. Qingyu and Daji were beside him. Daji calls him feeder and celebrates, saying that he finally woke up. She explains that this time she was only draining a little from the lake to catch all the fish, but she promises that next time she will not be so lenient and will completely drain the feeder dry. He gets up angrily, asking what is going on and why he was drained, because now he understands why his whole body feels heavy and why he feels empty, and apparently it was them. He asks the fox demon to explain exactly what happened, without hiding a single detail. She starts explaining the situation and tells him everything that happened. He makes the two of them kneel on the bed to think a little about what they did, and says that apparently it was Daji who gave immense wealth to the Su family when she came to the world 100 years ago, which led to the group's current prosperity. And then, to test his character, she specially arranged for the president to challenge him. So, in order to recover her own human form, she took the opportunity and completely drained his vitality. He thinks that actually this does not seem like such a big deal, but says that they are not going to do that again. Daji jumps to hug him, saying that she already knew the feeder was very good and now she likes him even more. However, an extremely strong light hits the two of them, and the protagonist gets startled, asking what that is. The fox demon laughs and tells him that he was unconscious for 2 days. But on the first day that had passed on Earth, 3 days had already passed there. Shingha says that this means it is time for a new mission in another world. Already inside the other world, the system appears saying that the main mission is for him to survive for 7 days. The reward after completing the mission is 1,000 reward points and a return to the current world. The number of participants in that mission is 7. In addition, there are also some hidden missions that have not been discovered, but completing a hidden mission may offer extra rewards. Shinghe thinks that Daji has returned to her small fox form, which is far less troublesome than if she were highly visible. Iwan and Ching were also there. He notices that there are other people. A woman is desperate, asking Director Wang whether they were kidnapped because she is very scared. The director tries to calm her down, saying that she should not be afraid because he is there with her. Ching tells the protagonist that this is a little strange because those people should be the teammates in that mission. But she did not receive any reward points when she secretly confirmed their identities. The protagonist thinks that this is very obvious because there will be no reward points if everyone is already gathered from the very beginning. In addition, he notices that this mission has a total of 7 people, 2 more than last time. In general, the more people there are, the greater the difficulty of the mission will be. Shinghe takes the lead and says that some people there are probably newcomers, so he will explain the current situation to everyone. Then he briefly explains transmigration and the current situation to all the newcomers. The system records this and gives him 100 reward points. He is surprised to find out that explaining the situation to newcomers can also earn him points. He tells everyone that the situation is basically that, and that the main priority now is to find a way to gather as much information as possible. Based on the experience from his last mission, the boss absolutely will not let them survive peacefully until the end, so they must find clues about the boss as quickly as possible. Wang is suspicious of all of this and starts laughing, saying that he cannot believe it, because even the kidnappers are keeping up with the times, planting informants among the hostages to play a role. He points out that he does not know how the protagonist brought everyone to that place, but he, the famous Wang Dahai, has been in the business world for many years and has eaten more salt than the protagonist has walked roads. Calling him a little punk, he asks whether he really thinks he can fool people. He throws money into the air, saying that the protagonist is also one of the kidnappers and tells him to stop acting like that and name his price, asking how much he wants in order to let everyone go. The girl who is with the director agrees, saying that the protagonist should name his price, because there is no problem in that world that money cannot solve, and if there is, the director will simply add a little more. Shingha feels offended and in the blink of an eye appears in front of the director, pointing his weapon at him, and stresses that he has already said everything he needed to say. And whether that fat idiot believes it or not is entirely his problem, because it does not matter what he thinks. However, he does not want the director meddling with him again and asks whether he understands. Dahai is so terrified that he wets his pants while trembling. He looks at the other people and asks them all to explain exactly what they saw before transmigrating. He thinks that this time, he was teleported directly to that place and did not encounter the monsters that were about to invade the current world, so maybe that only happens to newcomers. The man with glasses says that the sun dropped a spherical object and he ended up being hit by it, then woke up there. The woman who is with the director says that she and the director went through the same thing because they were shopping when they were hit by a fireball and thought they were dead, but ended up there. The protagonist asks whether the fireball is some kind of magical attack skill, like a fireball spell. Ching says that if they can find someone with that kind of attack method, maybe that is the boss they need to look for. Suddenly, some soldiers carrying bodies, led by a woman, shout and ask who the newly recruited soldiers are, ordering them to get out of the way. As soon as that woman appears, the system appears again for the protagonist, saying that he succeeded and obtained a random skill reward from the female protagonist, and the drawn skill is sound localization, C+ rank. He is surprised and wonders whether the heroine this time is that woman. He looks at one of the bodies that were being carried and thinks that those are burns, and perhaps they could have been caused by the work of the boss they are looking for. So maybe those experiments can provide some useful clues. However, he does not know why the eyes were gouged out. The general asks where the doctor is, ordering them to treat the wounded immediately. One of the soldiers informs her that the doctor does not seem to be in the camp and that he does not know where they went. Shingha tells the general that his friend there knows some medicine and asks whether she could try to treat them. He thinks that Ching recently changed class to Doctor of Evil and is perfect for this moment. The general smiles and says that they will have to trouble them a little. The system reports that the host managed to give the heroine a glimpse of hope, and her favorability increased by 10%. The protagonist thinks that by letting Ching take care of the wounded, not only can she ask for some clues, but he also managed to increase the heroine's favorability. His plan to kill two birds with one stone was truly perfect. He asks the general what happened to those wounded people. She looks at him a little confused. Xinghe explains that they are newly recruited soldiers, so they still do not understand the situation very well. The general explains that those people are from the exploration team. About half a month ago, the exploration team sent a carrier pigeon back, saying that they had discovered the tomb of the ancient giant Kua Fu in Chang Valley, but ran into some problems. As for what kind of problem it was, the letter did not specify, so she immediately ordered other teams to support them. But she soon received another letter from the support team, saying that everyone in the exploration team had suffered burns of varying degrees and gone insane, gouging out their own eyes. So she sent another message ordering them to retreat quickly. So this is the situation they are seeing now. Xinghe thinks that apparently the boss is not inside that city. Ching calls the protagonist. He asks what is going on, and she explains that all those people are already dead, so how does he expect her to save anyone? The general becomes very sad about the situation, and the system appears saying that the heroine's hope has been shattered. A small hope is far more suffocating than total despair. So her favorability decreased by 20%, and her current favorability is negative 10%. Xinghe cannot believe it. A short time later in the city of Shanghai, the woman asks the director whether it is really okay that they ran away like that. Dahai asks whether she really believed everything that boy said, because apparently she still has not realized it. He tells her to look at all those incredibly tall women in the city and at all the old-style buildings so clearly that place is a film studio used to shoot period dramas. The woman says that the protagonist really had a gun just a little while ago. The director says that it was, at most, a prop, and asks whether she really needs to think about it. He points out that Secretary Jiang is still very young and inexperienced, easily deceived. He earns millions per minute, so he does not have time to stay there playing around with them, and they need to get out of there and go back. He starts smiling and thinks that after he returns, he will continue having his secretary handle business and secretarial duties with him, which will be satisfying. But she becomes completely terrified and asks the director to look ahead. A huge monster had appeared before the city walls, and she asks whether that is also a prop. One of the soldiers goes to the general and says that there is an urgent report, pointing out that the giant is attacking. She asks everyone to follow her to the city wall. The protagonist asks her to wait a moment and points out that they also want to go. He thinks that the boss is related to the fireball and the exploration team's experiments are related to the giant Kua Fu. If they go with the general to take a look, they may be able to get some clues. He tells the general that she does not need to worry about them. Although they are all recruits who have not undergone formal training since they chose to enlist, they are prepared. He says for brave warriors to feast on barbarian meat and laugh while drinking the blood of the Huns because they must give their lives for their country, and if not now, then when will they fight? The general is impressed by the battle cry, saying that the protagonist is domineering and heroic. She wonders whether it is possible that that young man is hiding something, and that in truth he is a battle-hardened veteran. The system says that the heroine was deeply moved, and her favorability increased by 20%, bringing it to 10%. She says that if everyone in that city had such determination, then why would they worry about being unable to recover that vast land? She asks the quartermaster to take everyone to the arsenal to choose their weapons. A short time later in the arsenal, a soldier says that he is in charge of the arsenal and that they can choose whatever weapons they want. The protagonist asks whether they really can choose anything, and the soldier says yes, asking whether he really thinks they are going to kiss some weapon. Xinghe tells everyone to choose first, because he will take whatever is left. Ching is happy and says that he is very nice. Iwan laughs, saying that he wants a big sword and the full set. But the soldier keeps looking at the protagonist, thinking that that kid is probably trying to win favor because there are many weapons there, so what difference does it make who goes first or not, as if it were possible not to have enough weapons for so few people. He wonders what the general was thinking to place so much hope in that arrogant kid, to the point of ordering him to take them to choose weapons. He starts running, thinking that he really hopes that kid does not wet his pants when he sees the giant. He shouts that time is short and battle will not wait, so he will go first to find the general on the city wall, and all of them need to go quickly after choosing their weapons. Meanwhile, on the wall, the general was ordering the archers to prepare to fire. They manage to hit with the first volley of arrows, but that only makes the giant even angrier. He lands a punch on the wall, sending the archers flying. Thanks to the punch, the wall begins to crack apart and the giant prepares to enter the city. Jiang remains worried and tells the director that it is getting closer and closer, and asks whether that is really just filming. He says yes and laughs, saying that it is a big production. The other soldiers prepare and throw their spears. Dahai continues acting arrogantly, asking everyone to call the director because he would like to invest in that film. The spears hit the giant, but that is still not enough to stop it. With just one movement of its hands, it sends everyone flying again. The general begins to worry about the situation. Another soldier tells the general that that giant's body is too large and their current weapons are not having any effect on it. She asks him to send men to bring the divine power cannons. He looks back and asks whether the other subordinates did not hear her, telling them to hurry up. She asks where the new recruits are, and the soldier asks whether they still have not shown up, wondering if they may have deserted. She points out that it does not matter because it is only human nature. After all, they are just new recruits who have not truly been on a battlefield. However, she feels truly upset, thinking that that boy is just an arrogant fellow and that she should not have expected anything from him. Because of that, her favorability decreased by 10%, leaving the protagonist at 0. Dahai bends down to look at one of the soldiers and realizes that he is not breathing, and now he finally understands that this is not filming, because those people are really dying. The giant prepares to grab the two of them, and the secretary asks the director whether he is still sure that it is only filming. But he thinks that this cannot be just a film because many people have already been eliminated. He pushes her back, telling her not to be afraid because they are just special effects. And if she does not believe him, she can go feel it for herself. But the truth is that he was only pushing her into the lion's mouth because he thinks that he spent a lot of money on her and now it is time for her to repay him. So she will have to stay there while he runs away. She realizes that she was abandoned and becomes angry, shouting that he should die horribly because even if she turns into a ghost, she will not let him escape. However, he only smiles, thinking that she is a stupid woman because money makes the world go round, and even if she turns into a ghost, he can still play with her using money because her cheap life can be erased. But for a billionaire like him, it is not so simple. The giant crushes the poor thing. The general asks her subordinates what is going on because the soldiers sent to transport the divine power cannons still have not returned. One of the soldiers tells her that something bad happened because the cannons from the arsenal have disappeared. And it was not only the cannons, even the normal weapons disappeared. The entire arsenal is completely empty, and not a single spearhead is left. She becomes desperate because of that, and the other soldiers start talking among themselves, asking whether they just heard that the cannons from the arsenal disappeared and even the normal weapons were taken. And now, without the cannons, there is no point in fighting anymore because the city is doomed, and he does not want to die. The soldiers, who had already lost their will to fight, question how that warehouse could be empty. But suddenly the protagonist appears, saying that this is not entirely true. He looks at the general and introduces himself, apologizing for the delay. She is impressed, saying that when all the veterans were thinking about running away, he was the only one who appeared, and because of that, her favorability increased by 20%. But the same soldier from before, who was still doubting the protagonist, asked the general not to be so foolish, because even if that boy shows up now, what could he possibly do? They are out of options, so a mere rookie will do nothing, and he tells the protagonist to stop pretending to be formidable because he is probably already dying of fear inside. Xinghe spreads his arms and countless weapons begin to appear from portals. He asks who exactly is scared because fear comes from insufficient firepower. He asks the general to watch closely. He fires every attack at the same time, hitting that giant from all sides. The system says that a hidden mission has been completed. Defeat the giant. Because of that, he obtained Giant Spinal Fluid rank A plus 200 reward points. In addition, he can consume the spinal fluid, which can make his body become gigantic for 3 minutes. He walks up to the general and asks whether she is disappointed, but she says no, because the truth is that he surprised her far too much in that battle, and because of that, he will receive the greatest credit of all. She is so impressed by that her favorability increased by 10%, and the current conquest rate reached 30%, unlocking the heroine's true name, which is Mulan, rank S. The same soldier from before keeps examining the cannons, thinking that they look a little familiar. Then he notices that they are exactly the cannons that disappeared from the arsenal. He shouts to the general that the person who stole the entire warehouse was the protagonist himself, but Mulan slaps him across the face and tells him to be quiet because it is very rare for such a talented person to appear in the army, and they almost lost the protagonist because of that soldier's arrogance. She thinks that it is obvious that she already knew it was the protagonist who emptied the arsenal. However, without him, if they had been forced to move the cannons manually, by the time they got there with them, the giant probably would have already destroyed the city and left. The other soldiers voice their concerns, telling the general that earlier, when they attacked the giant, they launched arrows and spears, but they had no effect. And even if they went up there, it would be difficult to cause any substantial damage to the giant because it has very thick skin. And now they are without weapons. Xinghe opens his portals again, bringing countless weapons for the soldiers, saying that they only need to choose whatever they want. The soldiers are delighted, saying that the protagonist is wonderful and generous. and that he was probably sent by some rich family, since he looks like a noble young man sent out for training. But the quartermaster remains upset by that situation because choose whatever you want was exactly what he had said to the protagonist earlier, so how can he be generous with other people's things? Mulan asks everyone to look and broaden their minds because the protagonist brought all the weapons back to them and even acted as a free porter so as not to discourage everyone. Therefore, she will continue pretending that she does not know where the weapons came from. With a smile on her face, she tells everyone to look at a newly enlisted soldier who had the courage to volunteer to go to the front line. And not content with just that, he brought his own weapons to fight, but also generously distributed his inventory to his comrades. And that shows how altruistic and fair he is. The system says that she greatly appreciates the protagonist's carrying capacity, so her favorability increased by another 10%. The general looks at the quartermaster and tells him to take a good look, asking what use he is besides mocking the protagonist. He tries to argue, but she cuts him off, saying that is enough, and asks whether it is really so difficult to admit someone else's excellence, pointing out that jealousy has already completely disfigured him. She thinks that the soldier needs to stop talking immediately because without Xinghe, they would have lost that battle a long time ago. Besides, extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures, so if that soldier tells the truth now, they will punish someone who rendered meritorious service. Meanwhile, the protagonist only thinks that that giant did not use any attack related to the fireball, which makes him wonder whether the boss has nothing to do with that kind of thing, and the clue is not very clear. Another soldier asks the general how they should deal with the giant's corpse. Qing gets excited, saying that they should dissect it and offers to do the job because she has never dissected such a large body before and is curious to know what it is like. She wonders what she should do in front of such a huge corpse because her body is trembling in shock and she can barely breathe. Xinghe and Mulan are a little frightened by how eager she is to dissect a corpse. The protagonist takes advantage of this situation and tells the general that she had said that half a month ago, in addition to the exploration team, she also sent a rescue team. He says that they already saw the condition of the exploration team before and they were all wiped out. However, he would like to know what happened to the rescue team and whether there is any kind of survivor. She is surprised by the question and says that there is one survivor. The person is almost unharmed, but Xinghe notices that she's a little uncomfortable saying it and asks whether there is something difficult that she wants to explain. But the general simply starts walking and tells the protagonist to follow her, because she will take him to see the person personally, and that way he will understand. Somewhere in the city, Mulan says that the person is up there. The protagonist says that it is a building constructed on a high platform and asks whether she is keeping that person under house arrest. Mulan says that is not the case, because he himself requested it. She points out that after he goes in, he needs to remember to close the door immediately. Sunlight seems to irritate him, and as soon as he sees the light, he becomes agitated. Xinghe grabs Qing by the arm, saying that she will go with him. She is surprised and asks why she was chosen out of everyone. He says that it is because she is the only doctor among all of them, so only she might be able to figure something out about that guy. As soon as they enter, they immediately close the door so no one will find out. The protagonist asks his companion whether she can see anything, but she says no, since it is completely dark. Xinghe finds that a little strange and wonders why he can see everything in front of him. Daji explains that it is because of her, because she shared the demonic race's spiritual vision with him. Now he has spiritual power detection. She explains that even in total darkness, his vision will not be affected. In addition, she points out that everything he is seeing at the moment is actually images detected by spiritual power projected outward. He finally manages to understand why everything he has been seeing so far is in shades of gray. But Qing is still completely lost in the darkness and asks the protagonist who he is talking to and what the two of them are muttering about. She points out that she still cannot see anything, that this is not going to work, and asks whether they can open the window at least a little. But Xinghe grabs her hand and tells her not to do that, and asks whether she forgot the general's instructions. Suddenly, something approaches them, and the protagonist notices one of the soldiers completely insane. He begs them not to open the window, stressing that they will come and find out because what the eyes see is not real. He asks the protagonist and his friend never to trust their eyes, because they should not have eyes. The eyes are what they use to monitor everyone. The protagonist calls the fox puppy and asks whether she is seeing what that thing is. She gets irritated and asks her master to stop the outrageous act of confusing a fox with a dog. She says that it is spiritual power, the manifestation of spiritual power released by some entity. She says that that man keeps saying that they will discover them. Released spiritual power generally takes on the appearance of the entity itself, so she thinks that the they that man is referring to may be someone's eye. The protagonist asks whether that means those things he is seeing right now are not real, being only a tactic to scare them. Daji tells the protagonist that he cannot understand it in such a simple and crude way. Although spiritual power has no physical form, it can still attack people. The protagonist approaches and greets the man, saying that the general brought them there to take a look at the situation. He points out that he would like to ask a few questions. The entity's spiritual power was becoming more and more agitated, and the poor soldier kept trembling in fear, saying that he did not want anyone asking any questions because he knew nothing, and he kept repeatedly telling the protagonist not to ask anything because they would find out. Shinka says that the guy is probably terrified of the eyes, and if this keeps up, he will not get the answers he needs. So, he has to use that move. Daji asks what move he is talking about. Shinhei throws Daji into the middle of the eyes. Because of that, the eyes latch onto her body and begin trying to restrain her. Shinhei reaches out his hand to the man, asking whether he can speak now. The man begins to calm down, and the protagonist asks what he saw in Changgu half a month ago. The soldier explains that the exploration team discovered the tomb of the legendary ancient giant Kwafu. When the rescue team arrived, the giant coffin had already been opened, and he personally saw Kwafu's enormous corpse. Even after thousands of years, the corpse showed no signs of decomposition, but that corpse had no eyes. Where its eyes should have been, there were only black holes like abysses, and the surface of the corpse was covered in flame burn marks. Besides him, everyone else touched that corpse, and without exception, they were all burned and left unrecognizable. However, there were no flames. He did not see any fire burning anyone, so he believes it must be some kind of corpse poison. Those flame-like patterns on the corpse must be some kind of deadly fire poison. The protagonist asks what all of that has to do with what he keeps repeating, that they will find out. The soldier begins trembling, saying that it is because he saw it and not everything he saw was false. Everything they see is false. It is all what they want them to see. However, he still saw it, not with his eyes, but suddenly an extremely powerful attack takes over the place, destroying those curses and breaking the wall of the room. Daji had become irritated and destroyed everything in front of her, saying that those spiritual energies were suppressing her own abilities, but they were only external projections and still dared to touch her. Ching is impressed by that, and Xinghai scolds the fox, asking whether she is joking and what kind of trouble she is causing at such a crucial moment. However, he is surprised to see that a strange mask suddenly appeared in his hand. The system says that it is the Golden Mask, S+ rank, an ancient mask with a strange design made of pure gold, very valuable but seeming to have nothing special about it. It has a special effect that blocks the eyes. Wearing it allows the user to look directly at the sun without being burned. Durability is 3 out of 10. The protagonist thinks that this is very obvious, because with those two long and thick pillars covering the eyes, how could light possibly get through? In addition, he questions whether that really is an S-rank item, but when he looks ahead, he realizes that the man is no longer there and thinks that this is very bad. The soldier had gone into the light and gouged out his own eyes. He tells the protagonist that they found that mask in Kwafu's tomb. Therefore, he would like the protagonist to take care of it, because it may be very useful at a critical moment. Shinka tries to stop the man, telling him to get out of there immediately and not do anything rash, because he is being so confusing that it is impossible to understand what is happening. The soldier says that now it is too late because they have already found out and his body is no longer under his control. Besides, he should have died a long time ago. He jumps down from above before Shinga can catch him. While falling, the soldier asks whether the protagonist knows why he was the only one who survived. He points out that it happened because he abandoned all of his companions and ran away, even though he had been sent to rescue them. He points out that he is a coward and lived like a dog for so many days, and now it is time to join his comrades down below because a person like him is not worth saving. However, he points out that the protagonist is different because he heard about Xing's actions in the past, and he has the courage that poor soldier lacked. The soldier asks the protagonist to remember not to trust his eyes, because they should not have eyes, and the eyes are what they use to monitor everyone, and the truth is the truth. Shinka becomes irritated, thinking that that poor man was right in front of him, yet he still could not stop him. Ching keeps watching that, and Daji, confused, asks what is wrong with her master. Ching explains that she is not human, so she would not understand, and asks whether she knows what the most painful thing in the world is. The fox becomes a little confused, and Ching explains that it is not anything specific, but when you see a vibrant life gradually slipping away from you and can only stand there watching, you feel powerless. However, she realizes that she is talking to a dog and asks whether she really can speak the human language. But Daji gets irritated and asks how many times she has already said that she is a fox and not a dog, and says that apparently all humans are brain dead, or something like that. Besides, this is not the time for her to focus on such trivial things. Daji tells her master that once again the clue was interrupted and asks what they should do now. Ching explains that that is not true, because the clue is not completely lost. The protagonist asks whether she managed to find something. Ching explains that that soldier kept talking about eyes, surveillance, and things like that. To a certain extent, what that poor man said may be true. As medical professionals, they all know that the eyes and the body's immune system are not the same. Human eyes have an independent immune system, and sometimes the eyes can even be attacked by the body's immune system, causing eye diseases. Although that statement is not entirely precise, many people believe that the eyes are parasites in the human body. In addition, she dissected the giant's corpse earlier and found something very strange. The giant's eyeballs were completely necrotic. In other words, the giant that attacked them was completely blind. The protagonist says that the boss is probably connected to eyes. In addition, what that poor soldier feared was not the sunlight, but rather what the light, together with the eyes, could reveal. However, he still had no idea what the man meant by the truth is Kuafu chasing the sun. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.